Or would you put us on? Wonderful, thank you, Nate. Hello, everyone. This is Monday, February. I had to think about the month. 26th, and it is 18:09. And we're meeting today in the Hanover Town Hall, sometimes called the Municipal Building. And we are starting off our budget session. It's wonderful to see all these smiling faces. Hi, everybody. I've been really looking forward to these meetings, and I'm not lying. We already had a non-public meeting. We're coming back into the public session. And first item on our, we do have a couple of things to go through, which won't take us very long, and then we'll get into the budget portion, so bear with us, everyone, please. The first thing is public comment. Is there anyone who wants to address the public, the select board? Great. Move through that. We're down to item number 6 already. That was quick. And there's a recommendation to set a public hearing on March 11th and or March 18th, 2024 for approval and adoption of the fiscal year 25 budget.
I'll move that we to set a meeting on the 11th or the 18th.
May we actually declare the 18th?
Alex, what did we do for a date for that?
We wanted to do both because we're not 100% sure which one. We're going to really aim for the 11th because we do have a statutory deadline for the collective bargaining unit cost items of March 12th.
Oh.
So we should really aim for the 11th, but it'd be nice to have the public hearing set on the 18th because we can't set it on the 18th if we need to on the 11th.
Okay. And we're okay setting it as an and/or? That's a little bit different than...
Just do both, right?
Yeah, we do both.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So,
You can change your...
so I move that we set a public hearing for Monday, March 11th, and also Monday, March 18th, for the select board to review and approve the FY25 budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Yes.
May I just, in comment period, state that I will be overseas at that time, and I would really, really like to vote on the budget if possible. And the 18th is the only. I could attend that way. I could attend electronically.
No, we did that before.
4 o'clock. Or we could call
if we have a quorum
Yeah,
here,
if we have a quorum physically here.
she can call in and she has voting
Cast
privileges.
Yep.
And the same holds true for me. I can call in
On the 11th.
on the 11th. I'll be in town on the 18th.
Jenny and
And I
Karen,
will be in.
will you positively be here on the 11th?
That's the plan.
Yes.
Please?
I make no other promises.
I'm glad we have that.
Exactly. Okay, so with that contingencies and full commitment from the three of us, it sounds like we can do it on the 11th.
Thank you.
And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, so we have a public hearing. And then the consent agenda items.
Do we pick a time? Is it 6 or is it
Oh, should we?
7?
Well, we already have a meeting scheduled at 7, so
Yeah.
it's at that
So
time.
it's at 7?
Yeah, in the rest of the board meeting. So items Roman numeral 1 through 5 by consent, review and approval of real estate tax abatements, review and approval of New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety Equipment grant application, and to authorize the town manager to execute any necessary documents, approval of minutes from February 5th, donations to the Etna Library, and banners for Dartmouth College, Storrs Pond Recreation Area, and Howe Library. Does anyone have any issues? Usually the ones we have issues are with respect to the minutes. Are we going to leave the minutes? I had no trouble. I think the minutes were perfect. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll leave that in the consent agenda. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
To approve.
So second?
Great.
Okay.
Is it just done when you say move to approve?
Well, I was going to say move to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5.
Whoa, sorry.
But no, that's okay.
Speaking too quickly.
No, that's all right.
Apologies.
Brief is good. Brief is good.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And do we have a list of there's a lot of,
Yeah, there's,
contributions to the Etna Library, and I think it's very much worthwhile to read them. I just don't have it organized. Does anyone have it? Nancy, you look so organized, look at you. Thank you. There's a lot of them, so this is awesome. The Etna Library has received the following donations in, this is the right agenda, right?
yep. Oh, no.
No, I think that's the old, no, it is. In member of Petey Bernie, Susan Mullins, $25, Marcia Peraza, $100, Margaret Galbraith, $20, Mark Gerstel, $50, Victoria and Reed Drucker, $50, Arthur R. Poor Jr., $250, Susan Apple, $95, William and Ellen Bridges, $20, David and Ann Chaffee, $25, Richard and Pamela Buma, $50, Catherine and Peter Christie, $50, Ellen Donnelly, $20, Paula Sy, $200, Bill Reel and Lisa Gillion Reel, $150, Cynthia and Daniel Bernard Family Trust, $200, Mark and Paula Schleicher, $300, Mary and Leo Hamill, $50, and Gary and Sandra Johnson, $250. The Etna Library has also received an anonymous donation in the amount of $5,000. Wow. That's special. And a donation from Susan Gagnon in the amount of $40 in memory of Richard Paul Rabaka. The Etna Library has also received donations from Todd and Judith Fothergill, $100, and Richard Daly, $500. That is a long list of wonderful gifts to the Etna Library, and each and every one of them is much appreciated. Thank you. So we made it through the consent agenda. And are we doing town manager report now, or is
We can do it, but there's nothing to it.
Okay. Before we get into the budget portion, I think we can also, why don't we table the select board and committee reports until maybe, unless there's something burning that anyone has to talk about.
I
Okay,
have a 60-second.
please.
Any of you who are, tomorrow your planning board is meeting and you're used to meeting in this room. Instead, we're going to be in the mail room. Thank you, Howe Library, 7 o'clock tomorrow for regular planning board agenda. And it also is our first reading and conversation about amendments to town meeting zoning amendments. So it's an important one, but because the select board is here, the planning board is down in Howe Library. I hope you can attend.
Thank you, Nancy. That is very important. Which brings us to item number 8, which is our budget portion begins. Actually, we're ahead of time, which is great. Before we start, I just wanted to say that I kind of glibly said that I was really looking forward to this, and I am. The amount of preparation that I've seen Alex and Ellen and all the department heads and the staff put into this has been remarkable, and I think we have a truly well-organized and for lack of a better word, great budget starting place, and I'm really looking forward to the next couple of days to see where this brings us. But speaking just for myself, and I'm sure I'm reflecting the rest of the board, I appreciate everything that's gone into this. I know there's a ton of work on everyone's part. Thank you all. Alex, how are we starting? You have the overview and agenda presentations.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump into the presentation here, which I'll open up for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to kick it over to our first department. So as we get started, I'll just show, especially for folks that might be watching, that everything that we're going to look at today is also available on our website. It did fix, there were some broken links on here, but these should all be working. A little hard to see on the presentation here, but these are all at hanovernh.org/budget. So as we put more materials together, you can click on this thing up here or some of the links down here, and we'll be going through these day 1, day 2, day 3 slides during these meetings over the next couple days, but there is a full Microsoft Excel workbook, which I'm probably not going to put up on the screen here. The town's master plan, the select board's FY25 aspirations, and some other documents we just sort of started to collect that might provide more context or information for folks that are looking to sort of jump into the budget. So all of that's on the website. If there's anything that any of you notice certainly that should be on there that isn't on there, please let me know, and there's a OneDrive folder where we're sort of collecting everything, so if there's documents that might be helpful to people, just let us know, and we can add those to the dashboard. So I'm going to try to zoom through the beginning of it here. I always like to sort of disclaim a document like this. So these are draft materials for the budget. This is something that we sort of started last year a little bit, was presenting a draft budget, taking feedback, and then making changes, and then coming back in a couple of weeks to kind of present the revised and final version. So obviously the Select Board and the Finance Committee and others that give us feedback about that is really important, but Ellen and I are under no pretenses that what we have presented is 100% error-free and finalized, so please don't feel shy about pointing anything out if you do notice anything that needs to be fixed. So there's a bunch of different folks that work on the budget, and I'll echo Athos's comments from earlier too. So see, myself and Ellen are sort of perhaps ringleaders is not the right word, but the main folks driving this process from the sort of different, from our departments and staff to the Select Board, Finance Committee, and others. It's amazing what our department heads have submitted, and obviously you all know this because you've been hearing these, but many of you have been watching the budget presentations longer than I have, but we have a pretty phenomenal staff here in Hanover that really know their budget well inside and out, and it makes what Ellen and I do a lot easier, and it is a very good thing that we have people in those positions who not only submit reasonable, thoughtful requests, but are really good about controlling spending throughout the year. Would also like to thank the Finance Committee because they have provided some extremely helpful feedback and advice. We met with them last week, made some updates to some of the documents the next day based on some of the feedback. So really helpful to be able to talk and work with the Finance Committee. And then obviously the Select Board has given us the guidance and the support and the leadership to bring forward what we would consider a compelling budget. It's got a lot of exciting stuff in it that we'll talk about over the next couple days. But we're all playing catch up. And we're doing a couple different things at the same time. I just want to thank the Select Board for sort of giving us the support and the space to bring a really great budget out from our staff. And of course, obviously town meeting, we'll thank folks in advance for engaging with the budget and look forward to that in a couple months. So don't really need to go through the timeline, other than that we're sort of getting to the end of the process, but like with a lot of things in municipal government, it's a pretty long road to get to the point that we're at. Obviously I can't help but a little bit of millennial nostalgia in these things, and I remember Clippy from back in the days who was not very helpful actually, but hopefully is more helpful in these documents where if you see Clippy, there's usually a link to somewhere on the website where you can go get more information, or there's more documents, backup materials. So a couple sort of summary things before we kick over. I'm going to just do a very brief sort of overview, and then the top 12 things I'll run through that you may just want to sort of keep your eyes on as we go through the presentations. And so this is certainly for the Select Board, but anybody watching at home, these are meant to sort of help guide you to where some of the biggest items are in the budget as we go. So the draft that we have today proposes a 7.16 tax rate increase in the general fund. It's about the same for fire, slightly different depending on which district you're in. And then lower anticipated rate increases at around 2% or less for our water and wastewater customers who are also our taxpayers. And I've mentioned, but as we incorporate some of the feedback and the final 1% of a budget often involves quite a bit of running around. So far, it's been a lot less than last year, fortunately, although it probably couldn't have been more than last year. And as we do all that over the next couple of weeks, we are confident that we'll be able to bring down under the 7% that you all guided us in this budget. So this is sort of the most it can be. We sort of like starting at that point and working our way down. That means that we're at about a 31 cents per $1,000 valuation, meaning a house valued at $500,000 would pay an additional $157 to fund the town budget as proposed. And actually, Jenny, I don't know if you remember this, a while ago you mentioned something about if we could try to translate that into an average amount for a renter, which was a really interesting idea. And we did play with some different numbers there. It's a little complicated. And we landed with not kind of putting an exact number like in our tax rate calculation, other than that it's possible that someone may see an increase in rent somewhere around plus minus the increase in the tax rate. But we did try a few different models of how to show that, because I do think that there are many people who rent, and obviously this is important for them too. But we could talk about that a little more. It'd be nice to show that better. But anyway, that's the sort of metric that we've always used, so we do have that. There's a lot of text here, and I'll give you just the takeaways. But basically, the biggest expense in our budget, as always, is personnel costs. That's the same for most municipal governments, most organizations. And so, similar to last year, it's about a $900,000 increase in spending across all of our funds for our staff. So just that amount of spending would equate to about a 7.5% tax increase, all other things being equal. So some of that comes from fixed costs that we don't have a ton of control over and we get a bill for, like health insurance. We all see this cost going up, but for the town, without making any changes to our health insurance or adding anything, we're seeing a $300,000 increase approximately in our costs. Some of this is also catching up a little bit, making some investments in our pay and benefit structure that we'll talk a little bit more as we go. There's a lot of accounts that go up and down a little bit every year, and we'll talk about some of the more major ones below as we get into some of the different departments. And on the revenue side, that offsets some of those increases a little bit, and obviously we're going to get into this all in a lot more detail, but that there's revenue that is up in a few areas that did offset some of those expenses. So such as additional $100,000 of revenue anticipated in the clerk's office, an additional $100,000 in planning, additional $100,000 in meals and rooms, and a pretty big one, which is short-term interest, which is over $350,000. Our numbers last year were somewhat conservative, though they still might be, but it's been a pretty significant increase at Ellen that we can talk a little bit more about and certainly answer any questions about. So some of the increases in the revenue help offset some of the expenses there. Of course, these things don't match out one-to-one. And then what I'd like to do is run through these 12 things really quickly, and then we'll get to our department presentation. So as I mentioned, one of the main things that you may want to pay attention to as we go through the budget is our investment in personnel this year. So the select board made this really clear in our aspiration goal setting meeting that this was a really high priority, and the largest piece of the budget, I misspoke just a few minutes ago, but it's $900,000 in the general fund and $1.1 million across all the funds. And so we go into a lot of that detail about how we build up those numbers on day 3 when we talk about the retention and recruitment study specifically. So there's a bunch of changes that as the select board is well aware of at this point that are being applied to all departments that were sort of findings from the study last year. And instead of having every department head sort of repeat the same thing over and over, we're going to talk a little bit about any specific changes in any department as we go, and then bundle all of the changes that apply to all the departments to the last day. And we'll go through that in a lot of detail, can answer any questions there. The second thing that you may want to consider checking out as we go through the budget is that for not a ton of money, under $60,000, and maybe even a little less than that, we actually reduced total headcount. Through some creative ideas, we are gaining capacity for service in a couple different areas in this proposed budget. And so one of those is more for sustainability. One is more for transportation mobility projects, which is also a really high priority, but that's being done through a contract with the Regional Planning Commission. Some of that is going to allow some of our staff to take better care of some of our green spaces, which is really exciting. I'm doing this in collaboration with some of our partners, like on the Conservation Commission. We also have a really compelling reorganization of some of our social, community, and senior services. Excuse me. That is in the Parks and Rec. That will be on, I believe, tomorrow. And then there's some pretty small increases at the libraries for additional hours. And I think, as you'll hear a little bit today, these programs are amazingly well used by the community and keep going up. And so those are areas that we need to keep being mindful of investing in the future. The next personnel-related thing that you may want to keep an eye out for is multi-year collective bargaining unit contracts. I meant to look this up beforehand, but it's been at least 5 or 6 years since we've done a multi-year contract with the unions, I think. And so there's been a lot of one-year contracts, which is not uncommon in a lot of places over the last 3, 4, 5 years. Multi-year contracts do mean that we just have to flesh out all the costs up front, so that's going to be a little bit different when we get to the warrant and the warrant articles this year, because people may not be used to seeing 3 years of costs at one time. So we need to make sure to sort of explain that as we go. Number 4 is, we talked about this last year a little bit, is our earned time liabilities. We have significant liabilities in terms of the unused paid time off that people accumulate when they work here. There is a cap. The cap is still pretty high, and there are people that were grandfathered in before that. But in last calendar year, so in 2023, we paid out $122,000 in these payments. And before last year's budget, there wasn't anything in the operating budget to fund these. So this is a big liability. It is growing. It's something that we talked a little bit about last year, talked a little bit more about this year, but wanted to make sure that that was on everybody's radar, and give you the account number that you can check that out if you want to look at the numbers. Next is, this is a really big year for capital. And so the newly formed Capital Improvement Program Committee was put together this year and did a pretty big lift as far as review. How many total projects was it, including all the repair and replacement stuff? Which didn't really end up getting all the review, I know, but it's a couple hundred.
Hundreds. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just a huge process, and this is really important to do by bringing multiple stakeholders together. We'll talk more about that on day 5 when the CIPC comes in to present. But this is a big year as far as getting much more organized with capital. We're not 100% there, but this was a really big step this year. And making sure that all the costs that we don't know about are on the table, so there's no unknown unknowns. Number 6 is revenue. And so some of these revenue lines that we'll talk about in different departments can be a bit of a moving target every year. So some are a little more stable, but some are not as stable. The state aid, for example, is a little less stable, whereas the building permits, for example, we usually know a little bit ahead of time because we know what's coming down the pipeline, so we can predict out a little bit of where things are going. Next is number 7, which is, we talked about this a little bit last year too, but it's just reminding and sort of replanting the seed of the need for more comprehensive revenue planning and forecasting. We do a little bit of this on day 3. This came up a little bit in the CIPC, but not a ton, but it's basically that there are a lot of costs that we need to make sure we know how we're going to pay for in the future, and that we don't want to just approach things sort of 1 year at a time. Number 8 is tracking our undesignated fund balance and starting to really reduce its usage. So this was a big conversation topic last year. And this budget does show a reduction of about 10%, and we are looking at reducing that by another 10% the following year and another 10% the year after that. So we want to get off of the use of that, but not do it all in 1 year, which shifts that burden to the taxpayers in that year. So we just want to be a little bit gentle about coming offline there. The next is, in some of these different what we call OE or non-personnel accounts for general operating expenses. There are hundreds of these accounts in our budget, probably, I don't know if there's thousands, but there's hundreds of these in our budget, and some of them really go up a lot and down every year. A couple highlights are shown in different department slides, so like materials and contracting and public works was up $100,000. Consulting fees were up by about $50,000. There were some critical facility repairs, $200,000. These things can change a lot in a given year, and it sort of throws off some of the tracking, but we do mention them as we go. So there were some increases, number 10, in fixed costs. So I mentioned these a little bit before, but like health insurance was by far the biggest driver of that. Property liability insurance, it's a bill that we get, $11,000 increase. Workers' comp, almost a $20,000 increase. So those are things, there are fixed costs that we don't have a lot of discretion over, that we just basically get billed for. The next is just thinking about, just remembering that the town budget process, any town budget process, all budgeting processes to some degree are limited. They don't include every single possible dollar that is spent in a community on community services, right? They're the things that we're funding directly. And so there are things like we talked about this last year. Obviously, the shortage of housing has a huge impact on hiring in Hanover and on our budget, and relates to how we need to pay people higher wages so they can afford to live closer to town. But of course, housing costs are not in the budget anywhere. There's no budget account for that, there's no line for it, there's no section about it. And so just making sure that as we go through the budget, that there are going to be these things that we do want to sort of call attention to. They're not actually in the budget, and maybe we could figure out a way to show that in the future. But they are really important, and they do impact the budget pretty significantly. And then the last thing, and certainly not the least, is a sort of accounting and controls related point, which is responding to some of the issues in the FY22 audit that we recently completed. Thank you, Ellen, for your incredibly hard work on that. And there was a number of issues that were identified in that we've talked about here before and that we've written some memos about for the select board, and we just wanted to make sure to include it in. Again, there's not necessarily a line or an account or a step in the budget process about this, but this is really important to be aware of as we go. And one of the ways that responding to those audit comments and trying to gain the capacity to correct some of the issues that have been happening for a few years is by adding an FTE, which outside of one proposal in Parks and Rec that the way it's presented is basically tax neutral. This is the only FTE that's burdened on taxpayers, the only additional FTE, I believe, right, other than the Parks and Rec FTEs that are in the budget. And so we'd like to get started on that right away so that we can start working on correcting some of those audit issues. But this is something we've also talked about at the Finance Committee and wanted to make sure that it was kind of right front and center as we went forward in the budget. So these are all things to sort of keep in mind as we go through the presentations. Any questions on any of that other than many questions on all of those things that we'll hear more about in a little bit? And we'll sort of loop back to all those at the end with some more specific numbers on the last day when we go through everything. So I think we can, with that, still a little bit ahead, we can jump into our first department presentation and invite Rob Hausman up, and if you want to introduce yourself and
Good evening.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Hey, Rob.
For the record, I'm Rob Hausman. I'm your Director of Planning, Zoning, and Codes. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do for the community. Okay. No, I'm good. I didn't know how you were going to move through.
I'm going to try and read your mind. See how that goes.
Well, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to explain Clippy again, so.
Well, anytime you want to just go like this, and I'll.
So broad overview of the department and who's in the department. Our department takes care of 7 functions for the town, function areas: building code, conservation, planning, public health, rental housing, sustainability, and zoning. We support a range of boards and commissions, deal with all the applications that come into the town. I'm the director. It's a pretty linear department. Beth, our administrative assistant, I think that's a misnomer term for her, but I'll leave it at that. In that she processes every single application, calculates the fees, does all the scheduling, and in addition to our web presence and updating that. Ryan Borkowski, our building inspector. Between Beth and Ryan, we have 50 years of service to the town, and with Vicky added to that conversation, there's 75 years of experience. Vicky's no longer on this table, on this staff diagram. Bruce, our planner, does mostly zoning board and zoning related issues. Alex Taff, our senior planner, does project reviews and planning board support. The sustainability coordinator is out advertising it currently. We have about 9 applicants in the pool. We seem to be getting 1 or 2 hits a week with new applications. In the rental housing inspector position, we've completed our 4th of 5 interviews this week. The last one is Thursday, at which point we'll pare it down to 2 finalists to bring in for in-person interviews. With that in mind,
Rob,
yeah.
does Vicky still, is she like semi-retired or completely retired? Or?
Vicky
Waiting for that
officially
master plan
retired
to
2
finish.
years ago, April 1,
Okay,
but she has stayed on part-time to finish the master plan.
wonderful.
And if things go well, the planning board will adopt the master plan within the next 30 days,
Wonderful.
which will mean that she will no longer be an employee of the town, except for she is considering doing our easement monitoring work still.
Wonderful.
And our way of administering, she's going to write our chapters on administering the
Implementation.
It's actually done.
implementation. Sorry,
It's done.
thank you for the right
I
word.
think it's done, isn't it?
It's done.
Okay, Great.
It's
Just not really.
it's an amazing matrix that is pretty overwhelming.
Sorry to interrupt, I thought that was important though.
Yeah, no, it is important. Vicky's a key member of the team and a legacy that will be hard to replace. The the year in review assisted the town manager with specialty initiatives and supporting the downtown business group. Continue to support the Minkbrook Community Workforce Housing Project. We've initiated sustainable master plan implementation, focusing on zoning revisions. We have several pending zoning changes that are key to this implementation. We've completed the Housing Opportunity Grant Program. That was a monumental insight into the barriers that our zoning ordinance puts in front of developers for housing purposes, which has been built into our master plan and helping us come up with zoning changes. We continue to support Planning Board, Zoning Board, Conservation Commission, Sustainable, Hanover, Upper Valley Transportation Management Association, and White Walk Bike, and their subcommittees. Most of these have subcommittees. And we've developed an online rental housing registration and inspection program. That software is up and running. We are getting about a half a dozen applicants a week, and from that we'll bake in our inspection schedules and everything else. So that's gone live. That took more effort than I expected, but we were able to pull it off. For the year goals, we've discovered that there is no experienced rental housing inspector in the marketplace right now for us. And we are now looking to hire someone who will need some mentoring. So we will mentor that rental housing inspector to ensure the success of the housing registration inspection program. We'll continue to work with the town manager on community and economic development and specialty initiatives. I hope to be managing the Minkbrook Community Forest Workforce Housing Project as it goes through the permitting and construction phase. We will continue to develop a sustainable master plan implementation program, specifically looking at zoning revisions and streamlining permitting. This first lift on the zoning is targeting housing specifically. The next lift will be all the other elements as it relates to sustainability. I need to apologize. I'm a little cloudy in the head. I'm dealing with a sinus infection, so bear with me a moment.
Stay there.
It's not contagious.
Not that we don't like you, but just keep your distance.
It's not contagious, and I am on antibiotics.
Okay.
Good.
The other elements, we're going to migrate our zoning board applications and site plan review applications to our online software. Those are the remaining permits that need to be migrated over. We'll continue to implement missing middle housing reports and findings. Obviously, we're going to continue to support our boards and commissions and all the great work that they do. We will onboard the new sustainability coordinator and mentor that individual. And we're going to develop and implement the annual matrix master plan performance metrics tracking program, which is a key component to the success of the master plan. Our budget. We have a net increase in our personnel operating expense. We have a net increase in our non-operating expense, $61,000 for engineering and consulting for downtown building height and infrastructure build out, and additional personnel development. I'm not sure everyone is fully aware, but there was an effort to submit a zoning petition amendment to the planning board that would have changed the building height in the downtown to between 75 feet and 120 feet. In response to that, Alex and I had a meeting with that individual and discussed the critical elements that need to be evaluated to determine how best to move forward in any change in building height and how it impacts infrastructure, parking, and all the other elements that are key to that discussion. And this funding will help us do that with some professional assistance. Our revenue stream, we are seeing an uptick in building permits and several large projects. We have one scheduled for earth movement as soon as permitting will take place in the summer, and that's a key timing. So that will be a huge net increase for us on that one, and we have several others in the queue that will certainly allow us to achieve this increase in revenues. And I have no capital items that I'm aware of. With that, I'm happy to entertain any questions. I should do this.
Well, before we went on to the question, John, Ellen, if there was anything else you wanted to say, as we go, some of the budget slides, there'll be some stuff that the department head might speak to. There might be some stuff that Ellen might speak to as well, which we can do in things like that, where yes, there was a reduction of cost that Rob submitted in his budget from a staff retirement, but there was an increase in cost based on our calculations that applied townwide, and so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in particular, and it's just an example, Rob's budget is, we really are fine tuning, taking a look at the cost of the departments of their benefits. And the makeup of Rob's department has changed. And so the cost of supporting young families through benefits definitely is greater. So this year we really are taking the time to take a look at that benefits burden at the employee and at the department level to try and get a closer look. We do have more work to do on that, particularly because the collective bargaining agreements aren't complete, and so we don't know all of the elements of the benefits that will end up in those numbers. But I just wanted to call that out because it did impact Rob's budget, and probably from a percentage standpoint, the most significantly of all the departments.
And so, I mean, for me, hearing that there was 75 years of town service in 3 people, but you have a number of new people in there, so you're kind of dealing with the succession planning and kind of what we need to be doing across probably many of our departments. I can say that and not be ageist because I'm one of those people. But I think that, I think that makes really good financial sense, is to basically acknowledge that, we're seeing a shifting in population. So good that you still have some historical expertise, and it's good that you bring in new people to mentor and to share the knowledge. So kudos on that.
I'll take this opportunity to say that before Michael Hensley retired, we had over 100 years of experience with the forum, which is pretty incredible to have a department with that kind of concentration of service to a community. The other key element is in-department training, professional development. We had a total of $3,000 in the budget for professional development, and rental housing, assistant building inspector, building inspector, the zoning staff, planning staff, all need to be able to be up to date and on their expertise, and this gives us the opportunity to provide them with the opportunity to go engage in the field training.
I'm sorry, Mark, excuse me. So are you saying that the current budget is adequate in that regard? It's
been increased to address. I'm a little fiscally conservative, but I think it's adequate to address our needs. I know that I have the numbers in there to address the building inspector's work and the rental housing inspector's work. What I haven't fully flushed out is what efforts we need to do to support the sustainability coordinator's position.
Okay. Nancy was first.
Rob, you said that judging from your applicants, your rental housing inspector will probably have to be mentored because that human being doesn't exist in your current applicant pool. When you look at your applicant pool, the sustainability coordinator, is that not the case? Can that person come in without as much of your guidance on a weekly basis?
The answer is we have some strong candidates.
Okay,
I haven't interviewed them yet.
okay.
There are some unique challenges to the position in that it's not truly a sustainability director type position.
Right.
It's spread over a whole host of topics that may not fall cleanly in that column.
Yes.
However, I have some candidates that have a depth and breadth of skill sets in that area.
And they haven't tried to look for housing in Hanover. I'm just being facetious. We face that with all of our new hires.
One is moving to the region because their partner has taken a job at Dartmouth.
I've just a quick question. As we talk about implementing the new sustainable master plan, and I saw the zoning packet that went to the planning board for their review tomorrow night. I just want to make sure that, and I imagine you have it, but it feels to me like we're going to need some concentrated effort in engaging our public, our community, so they can understand what implementation of our master plan is, and in particular in my opinion, zoning overhaul to address some of the issues that we've raised. And so I just want to make sure that we have the expertise and the staff time in this budget to engage our community like we did in the master planning process, because changing the zoning of everyone's individual properties, I think there's going to be the need for dialogue and education and that commitment. So
Absolutely. If you dive into the budget line item specifically, we have $50,000 for consulting fees for zoning specifically. My goal is to carry on with the contract with Opticos to finalize a complete rewrite of the ordinance.
and that includes community engagement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Carry.
So, Rob, is it typical that someone coming in with a petition warrant article related to changing building heights would trigger a use of public money for consulting?
It's a great question. I shouldn't have called it a petition warrant article. It was an effort to get the planning board to adopt a regulatory change that would mirror that. The individual came forward with a document that was that had been presented to the Downtown Business Group and the Conservation Commission, and the thought process here was we truly don't know what limitations we have in total in the downtown. Peter and I have discussed what we have for capacity limits in sewer and water, and those aren't a burden to us. We have the ability to address those. I shouldn't call them capacity limits. They may be line limits that need a sewer line upgrade or a stormwater issue that needs to be resolved. But the deeper question is about how we address the overall density and address the parking. And it was the town managers and my discussion with this individual that led me to the idea that here's an opportunity to do the analysis in total and do it at a level that's independent of that height. Try to come up with what should be the max in downtown Hanover for a whole host of reasons, including the capacity of our infrastructure, our parking, and what's appropriate for a community of our size. I will say that 120 feet is the maximum height allowed in Manchester by special exception. So there's an example of a height limit that I don't think marries well with the town of Hanover.
So this work will actually help understand zoning change implications too, right?
It'll allow us to do also the visualization work that needs to be done to show the loss of solar, sun in the corridors themselves. We don't want to create dark, cold, windy canyons.
That's Montreal.
And some of the concerns are, light, imagine, if you will, Molly's going up to 75 feet. This building will be dark. The roof solar may not function. Those are the types of implications that we need to vet.
Well, don't you just then build the other buildings higher? And never.
Put the solar on stilts. So we're trying to do this in a systematic way that sets the framework for any proposed future change.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hi, Kari.
So I may need answers that you might have, but even though you're not contagious, you make me nervous.
Let me get my mask.
No, I'll trust you, and I don't think I'm contagious. So I'm Kari Osman, chair of the Finance Committee, and it's good to see everybody again. And I did have some really budget questions for whoever's able to answer them. And I have to say, one of the things that is sort of in my mind were actually some comments that were made by Joanna last year when we talk about revenues and how they're used and what the needs are of the planning department. When we see an increase in planning revenues, I think that we think, that's going to help the town as a whole. I have to say, this is also something we've discussed at Finance Committee. It was when Bill Garrity was still on the board. So it's been maybe about a year. But how do you view when you have an increase in revenue? Do you need it to be used in the department? And I guess, does it arrive in the year that you need it? Because we were envisioning that if a big permit payment came in on June 15th, it's really the inspection work that happens in the next. So I was wondering if you could kind of explain that and
Sure. So I think the payment of a permit fee is a snapshot in time. The work that goes into a project that ultimately gets permitted and constructed, there's months and months of staff time, staff that are here, police, fire, public works, planning, zoning, codes, all spend months working through the process with this, where there's no fee. And then at the conclusion of the permitting process, I'll use Dartmouth as the key example here. Any of their larger projects, we schedule weekly inspections. So we're in the building every week so they can continue to move forward, unlike a traditional single-family home where you may do a foundation inspection, rough framing, rough plumbing, rough electrical, finished plumbing, finished electrical, and then final, 7 or 8 inspections. We do them weekly, and some projects take years. So that payment in 2025 has no bearing on what our expenses are in 26 or 27. We're still serving that permit process. The monies that come into the department actually are general fund monies. They go into the general fund. We are anticipating several large projects. I think many of you have seen in the paper. We have one that will be before the planning board for this fiscal year for the Fairweathers. And we have what is 25 and 27 Wheelock, for example, in the queue for early or August of 2025 or construction, fiscal year 2025. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
Well, I guess there's, there maybe would need to be, more conversation. There is something called the Special Revenue Fund that monies that come in for a specific reason can be kind of reserved for that. And, there's a downside to doing that. But I, again, just wanted to follow up on the comments that were made last year to make sure that we're doing many of the things that our town managers talk about forecast, revenue forecasting and everything else. I guess the other thing that I'm wanting to know is in terms of the revenues, do you foresee that in a year or two, I mean, do you foresee that we're going to continue to have activity at these levels, or are we going to go, back down, to a lower amount? I mean, again, it's sort of how much can the general fund depend on this money being there? And if it can't really depend on it being there, then we kind of need to have that in the back of our minds.
So I will say this, that I am regularly meeting with a broad range of developers, including Dartmouth College, and if we were to just speak about their housing renewal program, we're looking at 10 to 12 years of active, robust construction.
Okay.
That's not addressing the new beds that have been on the floor of the president's commitment.
Okay.
So those are projects that we can think of. I will say that the unknown for me is their geo-exchange heating system. That's a major investment that's still in a state of flux as to how, where, when, but we're actively engaged in those conversations also.
Okay, so to sort of summarize, so you're not saying that this revenue stream is going to tank anytime soon? No.
No, barring unforeseen circumstances, I've seen Dartmouth is committed to the housing renewal program.
Yeah.
Dartmouth has, their president has made a commitment to new beds, and we're seeing that with 25 West Wheelock initiation, and we expect to see more.
And remembering your secret last year that going into the nuances of some of the appropriations is not your gig, but nonetheless wondering, so the charges to management information services that are up by 11,000, is that kind of a 1-year thing, or is this going to be a sort of a new level of spending that planning needs? It's going from 15 up to 26,000.
So I think that reflects two things. One is a shift in who's paying for the GIS system.
Okay.
I think it came out of Public Works into my budget.
Okay.
And the second is that our online permitting software is now there.
Okay, so that would be a kind of a permanent
Yeah.
increase, not temporary.
One's a shift.
Pardon me?
One's a shift.
Yeah, so it came off of, yes, I know, which pocket, right? I know. But in your budget,
Yes.
it's
It's an increase in my budget.
yes, okay. Let's see, last year we talked about the 50,000 in consultings, and at that point we thought that that was a 1-year project, and I have to say, I know you talked about it, but you were facing this way, and just then you had a kind of a throat thing, so I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you had to say. So now we're up to 100,000, so.
Sure. So the 50,000 of that 100,000 is, I'll step back. The original 50,000 that I had envisioned was intended to be matched with some state funds that never came to fruition. The HOP grant, the Housing Opportunity Program grant, had 3 phases to it. The state funded 2 of the 3 phases, which left me with no zoning amendments. So we're now chasing that element. So $50,000 is to bring home all of the zoning amendments in addition to the work that's already been done this year.
Yes.
And then 50,000 is for the height and build out analysis.
Okay. And then the 80,000 that's in ARPA is?
That's the money we're using right now with Opticos to fill the gap that was created by the state.
Okay, so I think the ARPA chart says that it's for fiscal year 25, but you're using it in 24, the 80,000?
It is mostly expended at this point.
Okay, who knew, okay. So 80,000 done.
The planning board has the proposed amendments in here.
And then my last item, last year we talked about vehicle expenses, and at that point you said that you were hoping to buy, and you went into some detail, and I actually, when you said buy, I figured you probably meant lease.
Lease purchase. Yes.
Okay, and is that happened, and this is just another installment?
We have not done any lease purchase. I have not updated that information. The two individuals who do in the field work currently use their own vehicle, and they're content with that right now. There are two vehicles in the budget. One is for the rental housing inspector. As we move closer to the hire, we will move forward with addressing that vehicle need. The other is the code vehicle. I'm still trying to figure out the cost estimate at the time was for a hybrid Ford Escape, which have now gone up significantly. And I'm trying to figure out with our public works fleet personnel, what an appropriate, less expensive vehicle would be that they would find be able to service.
And so we have, so we have one vehicle now, and we're hoping to
We don't have any
have
vehicle.
zero. And we hope to have two,
if needed.
if needed,
The rental
yes.
housing inspector, because of the nature of that work, will have a vehicle, and we would have a code vehicle for inspections if needed. If for whatever reason one of our building inspectors no longer wants to put wear and tear on their vehicle.
Which I could understand. And then just finally, how many FTE do you have in funding right now? And what would it be for fiscal year 24?
How many do I
Or
have
25?
currently
Yeah,
employed?
so
or-
20 in your budget.
So, eight.
8 FTE. And that's,
That's
and
proposed, also, that's carried forward.
that would carry forward 8 FTEs.
Well, plus you.
I think I counted one. Yeah.
Okay.
It's eight.
8 FTEs, because I didn't know if they were all full-time and, and so on, and it was what's in your budget as opposed to, because I understand you have some hires.
The rental housing is a tax neutral position
Yes,
based on fees.
yes,
The sustainability coordinator is a shift from a part-time position at a higher rate to a full-time position.
right, so the FTE would be increasing even if it's, again, neutral in terms of, but, so right now you have, in the current budget, you have 7.5 and you're gonna go to 8.
In the current budget, well, is the sustainability coordinator in my current budget?
So you mean the 24, fiscal year 24 budget?
Yeah, sounds like it's 7.5, and that in fiscal year 25, that we're,
Would be 7 6/10.
Kari, what's the point of that question?
let's
Why are
see,
you asking
actually, I have my sheet over here. It's something that the finance committee has been asking for several months. That we used to get, and I have it all the way from 2009, how the FTEs have grown, in the
Changed.
town.
Change,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
grown.
Yep, and so, but we haven't gotten that information the past several years, despite having asked.
How does that affect anything now?
Well, to know that how your staff is growing, what.
Changing. Staff is
Or increasing or decreasing, just the body that, just.
Again, how is that important though?
Well, to plan and look and think about things like, space issues, fringe benefits, the other person, I mean, there's a
Okay, that's
whole host of things.
Sure, that affects,
It affects.
I don't see how asking Rob that question right now is important though.
Yeah,
Well-
I don't think we've gotten this question yet, but we're happy to put some information together. We want to track a little more than just FTEs, but track overtime costs, track consulting fees, so that you can get a little bit more of a picture of what's actually happening, right? Just tracking FTEs doesn't really tell much of a story.
Well,
But if you
yes, it
include,
does.
overtime, is really important. You really can't look at FTEs without looking at overtime. And I would probably suggest consulting fees and a few other things that you could sort of track together to sort of see how things are changing over time, and where services and resources are coming from. That's something that we can add to the list. And
Well, that would be even more nuanced, but just getting the basics of, that 10 years ago we had, however many fewer. I mean, it's just to see
Different.
how things are changing incrementally is important to get a picture then of the big picture.
And I will acknowledge that, yes, Kari and the Finance Committee has requested this information. We haven't had time to put it together, but I will acknowledge that that request is in our.
Again, I don't see how it affects what we're doing. It's important for planning, it's important to keep track of, but it does, I don't understand how it affects what we're doing right now.
This is a public hearing, and seriously, we have been asking for this information for a couple of years, and we've been getting it sort of by dribbles verbally, and it sort of seems like, well, because this is a public hearing, this is an appropriate time to ask, given that we've asked and not been able to get the answers.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, I think it's an okay question, because I know I was part of asking for it, because staff is the single largest cost driver, so understanding the dynamic between staff levels and cost is pretty fundamental if you're going to analyze what's going on.
my only 2 cents is that probably going department head by department head is not the best way to get that information.
Totally, exactly, we shouldn't be doing that.
So we can put that together.
We should not be doing that.
That is what we
And on
asked
the list
for.
of many of the other documents that we're working on as well, so we can definitely do that. Again, I think we'll include some more information so that it's a little bit of a more complete, accurate story of things, and would be happy to sort of think about how to track that going forward. But certainly FTEs, overtime costs, consulting fees, things like that, we could put those all in and sort of show those. Again, I don't know if that comes before or after some of the other documents that are in the queue that we're working on, but
Yeah,
again, my only 2 cents would just be going department head by department head, probably not the.
Well, a lot of department heads did include that information in their reports.
Sure.
So then I already have that, but this was not one of the reports that had it. And again, it would be my preference not to ask department by department.
Good, then we won't do it.
I haven't gotten the information out of us.
Alex and Ellen have, excuse me, Rob, Alex and Ellen have committed to getting it for you.
I do want to clarify that I left out a vacancy in the part-time clerk's position.
Okay, so
But it's right here in the
Yeah, it's right
document. It's right here.
I see that, but I didn't see the FTEs. I didn't see the FTEs in each one.
Yeah, it's a.
Because a lot of times in these,
Okay.
it can be a partial.
Kari, do you have any other questions in this section? Great. So, thank you, Rob. That
Thanks,
was a
Rob.
lovely presentation.
Thank you, Rob.
Where is
Get
the
well.
agenda?
Yeah, you should be able to, you should be able to. It's okay. Can we send him home?
Up to Rob, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to miss Corey's presentation.
Stick around for.
If you blink, you're gonna miss it.
Corey,
Thank you, Rob.
welcome.
Thank you all.
Good night, Rob.
We'll do a private presentation.
Corey, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I am Corey Stevens, and I'm the IT director for the town.
Let's get it. I love that picture, by the way. Where are you? Excuse me.
That is in the basement of the Howe Library.
Lovely. Love that picture.
Great.
It's one of the few computer rooms we're proud of, because it was built to be a computer room, unlike all the others.
I'm not buying you dinner.
So I could read this slide to you, but I'm sure that you guys can read. I've been here for a long time. Michael has been here with me for 6 going on 7 years, still just the two of us. And our function is to make sure that the town runs and everybody gets the needs, software and hardware needs that they need to function in their jobs. Things that we've done over the year. I think you all have heard that we took on doing IT services for Woodstock, Vermont. It has worked out relatively well to this point. Gets a little tricky when one of us is out and something happens in Hanover and Woodstock at the same time. But it's been manageable to this point. We set up a secondary internet access for dispatch so that if our primary internet goes down, the CAD systems there will automatically switch over and continue to function on a secondary interface. We finished up a few months ago with a Phoenix system for fire, which is a digital interface for them receiving their calls. And I think Deputy Gilbert could speak better, but I'm told it's much more healthy for the guys than hearing a bunch of bells go off in the middle of the night, as well as consistency and the delivery of the calls. We have rolled out Adobe Pro with digital signatures for standardizing digital signatures in town. We've started to do digital archiving, and we've added an archiving system for email to help with 91A requests, which has been good. That has helped in the last few that we've done. We're in the middle of a townwide phone system install. Even though that's not our primary duty, it runs over our network, so it becomes our duty. We have recently replaced another set of printers and moved them to copiers, reducing further printing costs. And our overall printing numbers are down considerably as we move to more electronic files. And Alex and I met this summer with Dartmouth to try to start the talks about building out a downtown Wi-Fi system that sounds very promising at this point and should be completed hopefully in the next year.
Awesome, wonderful.
That's it. Go ahead. I have a question too.
Mike, it's not about Wi-Fi, though. Do you wanna
No,
do
go
Wi-Fi?
ahead, go ahead.
No, my question is just that you have a very large list of things that you did this year for 2 people, and I'm just, I've asked this of Alex, but since you're here, I'm gonna ask it of you. But in terms of taking on Woodstock's IT services, like what percentage of your time is spent dealing with them, and are there enough of you to be providing, shared services with a town in Vermont?
That's a good question. So initially it was a little bit of an investment on our part because we had to go out and inventory all of the computers in Woodstock and get a feel for where everything was and how the network was set up. And then we installed a software that we use here in town for remote service. So we can remote to any computer there as long as it's on and on the network. Mm-hmm. So that was a little bit of an investment, probably the better part of a week for the 2 of us. But since then, actually very little investment for what we're getting paid. I would say less than 10% of our time. I would say less than 5% of our time is spent on Woodstock.
So it's manageable?
It's manageable at this point, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have another question?
Nope.
And if I can add 2 cents in there, one of the things thinking about long-term, right now we have a dispatch center at the police department that provides dispatching services for 26 towns in New Hampshire and Vermont. And one of the nice things about that is that as those things grow and the economy of scale grows, there's some benefits that come along with that. We can negotiate a little stronger with Adobe if we've got 500 versus 100 users on an account potentially to get a better deal. But part of the idea also, the way the budget is set up this year, is to allow us, if we want to, which I don't think either of us are sure is a good idea yet, to look at taking on additional towns, but that would then allow us to hire an additional staff person. So right now, we have 2 people who oversee, 350 devices, 24/7, 365. And that's a lot of system to be sort of maintained by 2 people. And so the idea is that if we can grow a little bit, even though you're adding some demand onto providing the services, you're also able, you can't do it in the first step, but in an additional step, we wouldn't take on an additional community unless we were able to bring in an additional staff person. And then that would allow the Hanover IT department to have 3 people in it, which would make it a little bit easier for people to take time off and things of that nature. So part of the idea is that if we're careful in over a multiple year period of time, we might be able to get to a point, if we kind of play our cards right, and it's something we actually want to do, which again, none of us are sure we do, but it could give us the opportunity to have a larger department that would create sort of a bigger bench inside Hanover IT.
Nancy?
Speaking of the size of the bench, are you and Michael being compensated appropriately for, you are in a very hot field, and Michael is putting in incredible hours. Do you, as his boss, feel that he is being compensated appropriately?
That's kind of a weird question, isn't it?
I think between Alex, Ellen, and I, in the study that has recently been done, I think we've made great strides in that department.
I'm pleased.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We interrupted you. You were about to go to goals.
Goals. So we're going to continue the network infrastructure replacement, switches, access points, things that tend to go a little longer than our normal computer cycle of 4 years. We need to keep an eye on that and continue those replacements. Continuing to acquire software where functionality and productivity is needed. People come with requests all the time. They need to be waded through and decide where we're going with that. Continue to work on our cybersecurity strategy. That has been going well, knock on wood. You all have probably gotten a few know before testing emails. And,
I have about 120.
The one about
I have
Taylor
about
Swift I didn't like.
127.
That's what got at us.
That's what got me. I admit it did get me. Corey, this is such a loaded, not a loaded question. So many municipalities and other institutions, I'm thinking of the UVM hospital system, have been sabotaged, held for ransom. How do you, and I've asked you this, I think, multiple times over the years, how are we doing in that regard? Are you sleeping okay at night?
Yeah, knock on wood, we're doing well. We would love to have some more outside entities look at things we could do better. But when we have had others look at our systems, we often rate very well. I think, again, it's user education, because your weakest link is always your end user. You can protect everything in the world, but the way they're getting in is through the end users. So
Don't use Taylor Swifting.
Yeah.
You should block all.
So yeah, we do a lot of things. We have email security, where we have Mimecast, which scans all the email coming in and out, strips out certain extensions on attachments. We have the Know Before software that's training people what to click on, what not to click on. We have antivirus on every machine. We have a firewall in place. I mean, we've pretty much done just about everything we can do, with the exception of not having any end users.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. So the municipal Wi-Fi network we'll continue to work on, and explore any additional revenue services that we can come up with. And I'll let Alex talk to this slide, because I'm not positive that I understand all the changes on it, but.
So the salary part we sort of just spoke about for a minute. And so again, what's in the column and the explanation, and not everything matches up exactly. That's not the cost of the thing on the right. That's just the total amount that was changed in that account for IT. On the operating side, I know that there was a bunch of new software that is in the budget this year. There's some of this is also, so part of what Corey and Michael do and is that we have I don't know, how long is the replacement term for all of our computers?
4 years.
4 years. So they have, so sort of if anyone's looked at like Pete's capital budget for equipment, IT has something similar for all of our devices, when things cycle on and off. So you'll notice that costs go up and down a little bit every year based on how many devices in a particular year need to be replaced. This was an additional increase in this year, this 56,000 that I have asterisk, because last year we took some money out and used ARPA funds instead. So it sort of started from a lower point, so it looks like a bigger increase, but it's not. A little bit of money that was in for the website that was completed mostly is out. And then there's a slight increase, about $15,000 of an increase. So there's a total amount of expenses and revenue of about, I think 75,000 related to shared services, and those don't have any impact on the taxpayer because any expense that we expect to incur there is going to be offset by the revenue from the shared service. And then and you'll see this in every single department, about town-wide, we're increasing professional development funding by about $30,000 or $40,000 around all of our departments. So every department got at least some amount additional money access to. And then revenue, I just mentioned, that was that 15 additional that was put in, that gives us the space in FY25 if we want to expand further than where we're at shared service-wise, but it is definitely not a plan to do that at this point, just giving ourselves the option to do that. So is there anything, Corey, you think I missed?
No, that sounds good.
Carrie has a question.
Carrie, I'm sorry.
So the 75,000 is the Woodstock kind of coming in and out?
It's Woodstock plus an additional town or two. I think we put in 60,000 last year, and that's more than what the contract is. But the costs and the expenses match out, and then we increase that 15,000 to give us room to take on another Woodstock-sized town if we wanted to, which is closer to, if you include the beginning onboarding, it's closer to like $40-something thousand a year.
But if you have that intention, would you bring it to the select board?
I don't think there is any vote to be had on doing that.
An FYI kind of
yeah,
thing? All of a
certainly.
sudden,
I mean,
we
like we
find
have
we're giving services to Plainfield and we go,
Right.
oh, didn't know that.
So
It
I
makes us
usually
feel
include those
stupid.
sort of things in my reports, and
Okay.
I wouldn't know why I wouldn't communicate that.
Thank you.
You let us know about Woodstock, I do.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
We talked
yeah.
about it at length.
Yeah.
So same there, and it's just something we're exploring and just sort of setting ourselves up if we want to go down that road, but
Right.
I don't think any of us are there where we want to do it today,
But if we do, you let us know.
for sure.
Oh, I see the increase, okay.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the line item. Sorry, Carrie.
And the, looks like it's maybe a big hardware year, or at least compared to
I
last
think
year.
they're all about the same, aren't they?
This is, so Alex mentioned that in the description. So last year's hardware line had some money taken out of it and replaced with ARPA funds. So it's artificially small.
Right, okay.
So the increase from last year to this year is like $10,000 or $12,000.
I see.
But it looks like 50.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because of
Okay,
the
thank you.
artisan.
Nice.
Anybody else? Carrie?
So, Karen Rasmus again. Thank you for explaining about the hardware. The software maintenance contracts going up by almost 40,000. Is that, again, a sort of a one-time thing or now something that's going to be part of the
that'll
baseline?
be regular.
Alright.
Two big things in there is the Phoenix system with fire and a piece of software called CFA Systems, which our fleet manager uses. They tried to do without it and go a different direction 3 years ago, and it didn't work out. So now they're going back to it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. And then we're decreasing website development and maintenance. And so for that 8,000, what can a person expect to have happen with the website, if anything?
So last year we revamped the entire website, went to a new platform, rebuilt the whole thing. So there was money in last year's budget to cover all those costs. That's now done, and that number you see is simply the yearly maintenance.
Okay. So if people were concerned that the search mechanism of the new website, isn't reliable, it doesn't give you everything that you know that's there. This money is not going to help fix it.
That is not going to fix that.
But that is something.
That is on the list of many issues we have with the new website. Unfortunately, I think the fix is to find yet a different provider, which there are fewer and fewer.
Okay.
And we are not in a position, staff hour-wise or financially, to take off and go look yet. What we have is functioning and better than what we had, but not as good as what we would like.
And that's one of the issues that Corey and I have spent quite a bit of time on with the vendor,
Yes.
trying to get it fixed. And there is a sort of, not temporary, there is a fixed sort of that involves another third party, but it's just not, it's not really at the top of either of our lists, right? There's just too much other stuff going on. But we're aware of the issue. They have fixed one or two things related to the search. It has gotten slightly better, but it is not as good as what was advertised.
Yeah. All right.
So for people that can't find something on the website, what you can also do is just go to your favorite search engine, and pretty much every search engine, Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever, does this. You can put your website at the beginning of the search bar, and then you can search within that website from your whichever search engine you like to use, and then that uses that search engine rather than the website search engine. So that is a workaround.
Maybe that's a Clippy on our
Oh.
website.
Yeah, or something bad.
Yeah, there you go.
Why not?
I mean, this
Good job.
is
I walked into that one.
You did. You set me up.
Put it right on the.
Right on the
website
page.
banner.
This search engine's not awesome, but Clippy.
Yeah, actually, maybe we
Clippy.
can.
Yeah, use DuckDuckGo.
Anyway.
all right, and then I know that insurance, system-wide was an average going up by 13%, but a lot of the departmental budgets see it going up by 16%. And if you look in there, you can see that there's some additional thing. So what is going on with the flex plan?
Sure, so that's again taking a look at a more zeroed in look, and that has to do with the addition of, if it's approved, the supportive the dental premiums, depending on the healthcare plans that the employees have. There is a proposal for HSA contributions, so it's those types of things. And that's why you'll see a variation. Also, again, in sort of building out the benefits costs by department, we're going to see some of those differences.
Right, and I mean, I didn't bring this up with planning because you could just look at that number and say there's a staffing change. But a lot of departments are seeing 16%, and that just seemed like there's an answer here. Why is it 16 instead of 13?
And so that's really the combination of the anticipated increase, the base increase, and then the additional
benefits. Okay, all right. And if anybody is interested, I can say that you went from 1.6 employees to 2 or FTE in 2018. So it's been quite a few years, and I can only think how much the town's needs have
Infrastructure
grown
has grown.
in the past 6
dramatically.
years, and you have the same staffing level that you had 6 years ago. So
Thank you,
that kind of
Cory.
gives a perspective.
All right.
More gray hairs.
Yeah, losing them.
Cory, thank you very much.
Thanks,
That's
Cory.
wonderful. And we are moving on in time to the Etna Library. Hello.
That's me. Hi, I'm Jeff Messner, Director of the Etna Library.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on all the donations you got.
Oh, thank
Everybody
you.
loves it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's great to
People
have so
burning
many
this.
unsolicited
Yeah.
donations come in. It really makes us feel appreciated, so it's great to see. Thank you. I did just want to, we can go back 1 second now. I wanted to just mention a few of the slides that are up there. Those are photos from some of the programs and events we've had over the past year, which we'll talk a bit more about in a minute. We have our outdoor performance by Alex the Magician, which was in the library's beautiful reading garden. A program called Corbin's Animal Garden that we hosted at Trumbull Hall. And last but not least, a proud artist showing off his work from a chalk art contest that we held over the summer.
I'm sorry, what was the one on the left?
The leftmost is Alex the Magician in the reading garden of the library over this past summer. All right, I think you can go ahead now, Alex. Thank you. So when I talk about the library, I always like to start about the library's two names. I think both names are equally important, so I do like to spend a minute on that. Our official name is the Hanover Town Library. Depending on how you're counting, our story began all the way back in 1801 when a collection of books was traveling home to home in Etna. The community at that time was called Mill Village because of its location along the Mink Brook and the falls that powered the multiple mills there. In 1905, Hanover decided to construct the first town-supported public library and to build it in Etna. That beautiful, cozy building that was built in 1905 is where the library remains to this day. And because we are located in Etna and proudly serve as a cornerstone of that community, we are better known today as the Etna Library. When I think about what makes the Etna Library who we are and what makes it special, I'm usually drawn to 5 things that you see up there. First is our history. A lot of the furniture in our 1905 building is original. The desk that I sit at, the antique clock on the wall that I still wind every single week, the large table and chairs at the center of the library are all original from 1905. So when I see groups of kids gathering around that table every Monday, like earlier today, a few hours ago for our Lego Builders Club, or longer running groups like our knitting club, book groups, I always like to think about the individuals and groups that have been gathering in those exact same seats around that exact same table for over 115 years. I think it's important too to talk about the independence of the Etna Library's operation. A lot of people think that the Etna Library is a branch of our larger neighbor across town, the Howe Library. While the Etna Library and Howe Libraries do share an online catalog and offer reciprocal borrowing privileges, the two are otherwise entirely separate institutions with their own oversight, budget, staffs, and missions. The Etna Library is the town's fully public library. It's governed by 3 voter-elected trustees. Being separate from Howe allows the Etna Library to try some different things and to draw upon our unique strengths. And I think being governed by voter-elected trustees helps keep us tied closely to the needs of the town. Still talking all that specific organizational structure aside, the good news is if you're a Hanover resident, if you have a Howe Library card, it works at Etna and vice versa. The Etna Library also organizes an amazing group of volunteer couriers that bring books back and forth between Etna and Howe every single weekday so that patrons can access both libraries' collections wherever it's most convenient for them. In 2023, the Etna Library sent over 2,000 Etna-owned books and other circulating items to the Howe Library via our couriers for patrons to pick up there. The third element that makes us special is our rural setting. The land surrounding the Etna Library has been largely unchanged over the past 100+ years. The library is fortunate to have the beautiful and newly protected fields of Hayes Farm Park and the Nan and King Bird Sanctuary right in our backyard. We like to utilize the space as best we can with a story walk and by hosting many outdoor programs there. Fourth thing that makes us special, makes us who we are, is our size. We're small, we're intimate, we're cozy. Our size allows us to provide friendly, personalized services. Fifth and final defining factor of the Etna Library is that we fuel and are fueled by the community. We're supported by a tremendous group of volunteers, as I mentioned. We highlight local history, host family-friendly events, and work together alongside many other community organizations. Moving on to the library's staff, Etna Library is open 40 hours a week. We host 7 different ongoing programs, some of these meeting multiple times every week. In 2023, we hosted over 30 special programs. We add new books and other circulating materials to our shelves every single week. And we do all of this with only 2 staff members. The library is managed by myself and the assistant librarian, Sarah Molesworth. We're both part-time, with Sarah working only 12 hours per week. We are an incredibly lean operation, and we're proud of everything we're able to accomplish with so few personnel hours. I am grateful that included in the FY25 budget is a plan to make my position officially full-time at 35 hours per week. I've been in this position for about 2.5 years now. Sarah Molesworth has worked for the Etna Library for 10 years, and for 5 of those as the assistant librarian. The Etna Library is also fortunate to have 2 great long-serving substitutes available to us. So slide 3, we had a very busy year in 2023. We saw huge increases in our programming attendance, patron visits, and circulation numbers. To start with programming, as mentioned, we hosted over 30 special events last year. These included a tremendous variety of programs for all ages, all interests. For families, we had events like our outdoor magic show, painting with blueberry ink event, bicycle parade, and naturalist Susie Spikegold teaching kids how to be an animal adventurer. We had craft projects both at the library and take home, including Valentine's cards, spring flowers made out of paper, and Halloween spider webs. Our programs for adults included things like a talk by best-selling author Hank Felipe Ryan, vegetable growing for the New England gardener, a talk by the Etna Library's own Sarah Molesworth about her journey hiking the entirety of Vermont's Long Trail, and many lectures about local, national, and international history. Our one history that we co-hosted recently with the Hanover Historical Society was to welcome home a beautiful 19th century portrait of a prominent Hanover resident that was rescued from a thrift shop in Fishkill, New York, and now hangs proudly at the library. We saw a 61 increase in program and group attendance from 2022 to 2023. 7 of our 2023 programs had over 40 attendees each, with 2 of these having over 70 people in attendance. For many of our programs, we've enjoyed collaborating with other local organizations and small businesses, such as the Hanover Historical Society, the Etna Ladies Aid Society, Mink Meadow Farms, New Hampshire Humanities, and the Hanover Conservancy. We also have many ongoing groups, as I mentioned. Some new groups that have recently joined our long-running groups, like our book clubs and knitting club and story times, include a Lego Builders Club, an after-school art club, Universal Yums, and a Spice of the Month program. When we look at patron visits, we saw a 53% increase in the number of patron visits from 2022 to 2023. I think this was largely fueled by our new ongoing groups, more vibrant and varied collection of circulating materials, concentrated effort of outreach and advertising, and a terrific schedule of special programming. Circulation, we saw a 20% increase from 2022 to 2023. I want to mention too that we circulate a lot more than just books and audiobooks and periodicals. Some of our unique collections include video games, board games, the Tony Box screenless audio player for kids, and activity backpacks that include dozens of items around themes like colors and lights and baking cookies. Last spring we launched the Seed Library and gave out over 200 seed packets. We can't wait to bring that program back soon. I did also quickly want to mention state library statistics. Each year, the New Hampshire State Library in Concord gathers statistics from all of New Hampshire's 200 plus public libraries. I think that looking at this data and comparing the Etna Library's small size to its large impact offers valuable insights. The state library statistics are always a year or so behind, so the most recent state data is from 2002, so it doesn't take into account the large increases in program attendance and patron visits that we saw in 2023. Looking at library size versus the number of patron visits, of all New Hampshire public libraries, Etna is smaller than all but 20 of them. So in library size, when measured in area and square feet, we're in the 9th percentile. Yet we have more patrons visiting than many libraries larger and often much larger than us. In library visits, we jump up to the 30th percentile. Items in collection versus items circulated. The Etna Library's circulation stats are also impressive given our small collection. This is reflected in the number of physical items in the Etna Library's collection, in which we're in the 15th percentile, versus the number of physical items circulated, in which we jump up to the 39th percentile. And finally, for program attendance, we've long had very strong program attendance numbers when compared to other libraries in the state. Our total program statistics in the most recent data from 2022 places us in the 44th percentile among all New Hampshire public libraries. Okay, Alex, you can go to the looking ahead. So we are planning additional ongoing activities for kids. We have a cookbook club in the works. We hope to continue to work with community partners and to make the most of our beautiful backyard with even more outdoor events. I want to continue to capitalize on those things I previously discussed, those elements like our history, our rural setting, and our cozy size. We're a library that I think is a bit unique, a bit quirky, and I really love that about us. The Etna Library is often described as a hidden gem. I've heard that very often. I love the gem part of that description, but since I started as director here, I've worked hard to make the Etna Library less hidden. Given our patron visit, circulation, and program attendance statistics from the past year, I'd say we're well on our way to becoming less hidden, but we do still have a ways to go. I want to welcome, for those who haven't been inside the Etna Library in years or ever before, please stop by, say hello, see everything we have to offer. Wanted to mention to the members of the Select Board as well, the Etna Library has a monthly newsletter. You all get added to that mailing list when you are elected to the Select Board. Please take a few minutes each month to look this newsletter over to see everything that the Etna Library is doing. And for you in this room as well, please stop by, say hello, see everything we have to offer. I think that brings us to the budget slide. I'll let Alex and Ellen jump in, but I just wanted to mention a few things. One other important statistic that the New Hampshire State Library collects each year is the percentage of a town's municipal budget that's spent on their library or libraries. Of the 166 public libraries that reported the statistic in 2022, the Etna Library ranks last, ranked 166 of 166, receiving just 0.32% of Hanover's total budget. The Etna Library offers a lot to Hanover with what we're given, and we're proud of all we're able to accomplish with the resources made available to us. The proposed budget increases for personnel seek to better acknowledge the full breadth and responsibilities required of the Etna Library staff and the full range of job responsibilities performed within the positions of library director and assistant librarian. Other increases are for some of the library's most important operational budget lines, including circulating materials and programming costs, budget lines that have remained largely unchanged for many years. Alex and Ellen, I know you have additional.
Before we jump in, Jeff, that was a lot of fun. I really appreciated that whole thing.
Thank you.
There were two things that caught my mind, but really that statistic you just quoted, well, at first it seemed like it was screaming at me like we're way underfunding it, but it also I think has to do in proportion with the size of the budget and the size of the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
And trying to compare us to, I mean, Lebanon doesn't have, to the best of my knowledge, for example, a library of your character.
They have a pretty cool library.
Okay,
Let's not
library.
compare ourselves, they have 2 libraries.
Yeah. The Kilton and the downtown.
Yes,
They're
Okay,
downtown
they're-
library, so
Yeah.
They're
careful.
bigger.
Don't ever compare libraries.
Yeah.
It's not a competition. We
I
love
just
them.
wanted to make sure that we're adequately funding the Etna Library but I don't like ever being 166 out of 166. I'm very competitive. Is that a true statement? Not that I'm
That you're competitive? I don't know. Yeah, so you do have to take that with a grain of salt. With different municipal governments have very different amounts to work with initially, but just in terms of the amount of the total budget in Hanover going towards the Etna Library, it is the smallest of those who reported that statistic in 2022.
And I would, I take to heart that hidden gem discussion that you had, because both of those, the gem part is entirely true. Maybe you could put on your goals, just state it, become less hidden.
Great. No, it definitely is on my list there. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the only thing I'll just add is just that, this is, we do have some changes, like Jeff mentioned, bringing his position to full-time, which is not fixing maybe, that was 166 was the total. Yeah, maybe not quite, but moving us in the right direction. I think, in reviewing everything and going over, all the department budget requests, the Etna Library was definitely a department that, many of our departments are in this situation, but definitely Etna Library could use a little additional support. And I don't think that we have done everything that we can do there, but the hope is that we're sort of moving in the right direction. We added some more hours for the assistant librarian position as well. And the hope is that helps us kind of keep going in this direction. And the feedback that we've gotten from the community, and we talked about this as a board in our goal setting workshop, is that there's a lot of things that people use in town, and I use Howe and Etna both as good examples of this, as Parks and Rec is as well, where people are increasing the amount that they use all of these resources. And so when we look at FTEs and we look at tax rate increases and all those sorts of things, if we had a flat population and flat usage every year, Jeff and Ruby were coming back and saying, oh, we had a slight decline in people participating, and people are, I don't know, they don't really seem to see there's a value with the library, but that's not what's happening at all. It's the opposite of that. The more programs we do, the more people come in to do those programs and ask for more. And so I guess we wanted to introduce a budget that supported the growth in some of these departments. That was the only comment I had, was just about starting to work on some of the personnel-related hours issues and getting us a little bit more competitive there and a little bit more aligned with what we think we need to be able to offer the community the resources they want.
And then I just add that the second largest increase after compensation is for the circulation, adding to the materials. And Jeff had pointed out when he put together the budget that we have really kind of marched forward over many years at a pretty flat amount of about $9,000. So to sort of add that into the budget and to support the, either new materials or replacement, I think was important too.
Yes, definitely.
And Jeff, do you want to just share real briefly? I mean, so a little bit of additional money for the circulation materials, what kind of stuff does that get? Like, do you have anything in mind there?
There's some kind of outdated parts of the collection, especially children's nonfiction, that I've been trying to modernize a bit. We still have a lot of things like back in the day where public library, children in public schools were kind of going to the library and pulling books off the shelves to do their book reports, as opposed to some things that kind of are more intriguing to kids these days. Graphic novels as well. When I started, that very popular category was very underrepresented in the Etna Library, so I've been building that out. So kind of that process of updating some of the popular collections with some more modern things, offering some new types of materials like the video games and the Tony box and the activity backpacks, trying to add more of those kind of non-traditional, non-book items has been
I don't know what that is. What
really
is that?
fulfilling, I think.
A Tony
Was it-
box, you should tell
Tony
Atlas
box?
what a
Yeah,
Tony
I
box.
hadn't known
He's
what
got
it was
old kids,
either,
he doesn't
yeah.
know, but
My son
not a
still promised
grandfather
it
yet.
too, but it's a speaker, wireless speaker that is designed for children. It doesn't have any screen, so it hits that no screen time requirement that a lot of parents have. And you just put little figures on the top of the speaker, like a Pete the Cat figure on top of the speaker, and he'll start launching into Pete the Cat stories and songs. So
It's
the
really
figures activate different stories and songs on the speaker, so kids can just carry it around and have their figures with them. Have fun that way.
Wonderful. Any board, any questions? All right.
Just you
Nice
have
to see you
met.
too. I know I had COVID last year, so I was
Yeah, you did, you
I was
were
on the
here at this
screen, I
one,
was in
yes.
person, so
Yes,
good to be
that's
here.
in person. Yes. So, I guess one of the first questions that I had was that I did notice on the undesignated fund balance that there was 8,000 targeted for a fire detection system. And I didn't see that in this budget, and I was just wondering where I could find it.
It's in the, go ahead.
It's in DPW.
Okay, all right, that's great. And then,
And Alex covered that in the introduction somewhere. I read it somewhere.
well, but some of the things from undesignated are in the select board. Yeah, I mean, they're different places, so.
Yes.
And I have to say, I was saving up for DPW tomorrow. But I think that people at the DS are familiar, but Jeff may not be, that one of the things that the finance committee does is not necessarily question whether money should be spent, but just what is the best way of funding it. And in addition to being on the finance committee, I happen to be a trustee of the trust funds, not, so we have some interaction with the library trustees. And one of the things that's come to my attention, because I'm new, is that there's 150,000 of trust monies that are not completely expendable, but I haven't seen them being used. And I know that there's another fund that the town has that is really focused on programming. And then there's an expendable trust that you could go down to zero, and it has 45,000 in it. So when I see a very small incremental increase in supplies and actual programming, I think you wanted to call it programming, not just supplies. I was wondering whether any thought had been given to utilizing these other pots of money that actually should be used. People had the money given because they wanted them to be used, and now they're there. Although I do see that it looks like the trustees are maybe thinking of having 3,800 in revenues from the trust funds.
Right, yeah, I think Ally can speak to this too, but I think she and I have both been working to better understand the Etna Library trust funds. When I started, my predecessor didn't really tell me that they even existed, and the previous finance director hadn't really mentioned them, so I kind of discovered them on my own over time. I never knew how to kind of tap into them. I've been working with Ellen with us since she started, and I think we made some progress understanding them and being able to draw from them, but I think it's still a work in progress as well.
Yes, it seems like all of our trust funds are a work in progress. But I guess I would still, between now and the time that the budget is adopted, think about whether or not, there's a better way to utilize some of those funds for this very worthy part of the town's governance that we just talked about. And I have to say, I am really interested to know, so how many FTE are we going up? And I've already been told I can't.
We're gonna get the,
I
we're
can't
gonna
ask
get you
that
that.
question, but we do know that
No.
you're going up to full-time and some extra hours.
Yep.
For, but we don't know how much, okay.
No, he said 35 hours.
And
And
is that equivalent, but that's him, that's so 35 hours, that's one full FTE as
Yep.
opposed to 40 hours. And then
The 35 is full-time for us.
yeah, so that's one
That's one
FTE.
FTE.
And then I thought I heard that the assistant was also having
Assistants,
some
assistants
additional.
actually not getting additional hours. There was adjustment being made to her, I don't know, Alex, if you
Her
were
hourly.
talking
I thought we
about
had some additional hours budgeted.
Sarah's position.
Yeah, that's what I thought,
Nothing
but-
yet talked about.
Yeah, we can double check that. I thought we were doing a little bit more there, but we can
I'll
look at
take
it.
it down. But,
So I guess we don't have an answer.
Pardon me?
I said, I guess we don't have the answer.
No, okay, great, thank you.
Jeff, that was wonderful, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
Fun trip.
thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And we're up to Howe,
Howe.
Ruby. Is it what? Yeah, right, that's what I just said, right?
Yep.
And that's great.
You're next.
I think you guys are gonna get a history, library history lessons tonight.
Well, we want to see the dueling library.
Yeah, there you go.
No, we don't.
I didn't get the
We
memo on
both,
that.
we
wants to
love
see the
both
Well,
libraries.
Well, now look, you understand well, you may not understand. I wasn't trying to,
No, I know
Compare
what you were
people.
saying, yeah, but.
I was trying to make sure that everybody was happy and
We just don't want to bring up Lebanon, we love it.
When we talk about
I didn't-
compensation, we have a Lebanon jar athos.
But Lebanon doesn't have
They have a very
they don't have a
different
library
model.
the size of the Hanover Town Library.
They're smaller ones, yeah, it's probably.
They just did a big addition.
Yeah, so, and different population differences, so.
I shouldn't have mentioned that.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can't work.
I
We're all friends,
apologize.
it's a very small tight group.
I
yeah.
apologize.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And I thought it'd be helpful to start, and I'll try to do a quick overview of the Howe Library unique structure and the role it serves the community and how the library's history, collaborative efforts, and the current financial model highlights this, I think, successful partnership between the town of Hanover and the Howe Library Corporation. I know some of you are new and not familiar with the unique structure, so I thought it would be helpful and maybe a refresher for some as well. I think probably Nancy and I are the ones that are in it fairly deep and understand it quite well. But I'll start with a little bit of the history. The corporation was established in 1900 by an act of the General Court of the state of New Hampshire. The Howe Library Corporation was entrusted with the responsibility of establishing and maintaining a public library in the town of Hanover, which made it an incorporated library. If any of you are familiar with Norwich, that is the current structure that Norwich has. It's incorporated, it is now not a town department. Until 1972, the corporation managed the library and its fully operating budget. As the town increasingly supported the library through appropriations, the transition to making the Howe Library a town department occurred, and plans for the current building took shape. So in 1974, an agreement between the Selectboard and the trustees solidified the town's permanent financial responsibility for the library services, leading to the merging of the Howe Library into the town's operating budget, making it a town department.
and the corporation's focus shifted to the new building, which is in our current location on South Street, leading to a capital campaign that was fully funded and led by the corporation. So fast forward to 2020, in the memorandum of understanding with the town and the Howe Corporation, it was amended by the corporation board and the town manager, where the corporation assumed responsibility for all library programming and collection expenses. This move decreased the library's town operating budget by an annual amount of over $60,000. So initially, I think the costs were shared. Primarily, the town paid for everything, and then the corporation either helped subsidize that in various options. But I think in 2020, both town manager and the corporation felt it would make it much more clear proposal to separate those, particularly because the corporation does a lot of fundraising every year, and it's easier to appeal to donors when you're asking for programming and collections as opposed to maintenance and other infrastructure kind of needs. So that was the shift that happened in 2020. So our current structure and financial model is a collaborative effort between town and corporation. And as I said, the town provides funding for staffing and the building maintenance, while the corporation, operating as a 501c3 nonprofit, supports the funds of all programs, collections, and special initiatives. This dual funding model ensures a holistic and sustainable approach to the library's operations. And as for the community involvement, the structure of the corporation involves over 300 nominating community members according to the bylaws, and is governed by a board of 12 trustees elected by the corporation membership that oversee the endowment. This inclusive structure underscores a strong community involvement in supporting the library's initiatives, making it a true reflection of the community's needs and aspirations. So that's kind of a general overview of how the corporation, or how the Howe Library came to be, and how it's also under the town as a town department, which I think Jeff had mentioned. You know, his governing structure is slightly different. They have more of the traditional elected board with trustees. Ours is a private public structure. You know, we are a town department that's under the town. You know, my governing structure is the town manager and select board, but the board of trustees are ambassadors in an advocacy group as a 501c3, similar to like a foundation or a friends group. Anyone have any questions on that aspect of it?
Good.
Yeah. So that was kind of the summary I went over, so you can jump to the next slide. Sorry. So the Howe Library is composed of 28 staff members. We're about 17 FTEs, I believe. I usually run that number every year, and I didn't do it for this one, so now I'm kicking myself for that. We do have 16 part-time and 12 full-time staff. The ranges, to give you kind of a perspective of the part-time, our smallest part-time is 8 hours, and it can go up to 20 hours. So that gives you a sense of the range of the part-time employees. So it sounds like there's a lot, but it's, you know, it's little pieces of hours. You know, we're open 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday, 57 public service hours. We do have 3 floors. So I think we try to have a minimum of staffing at all times, particularly for public safety. For public safety, particularly evenings and weekends at closing. So we always try to have at least a minimum of 3 staff members at all times in the building. So that gives you a sense of how our staff is distributed. Yep. So for this year review, I threw in a couple of stats in there, give you a sense. Like Jeff had mentioned, we do annual state reports. Here are some of the numbers for this year. We circulated over 179,000 items. That averages out to about 490 items a day. I have to say we're still a little low compared to what we were pre-COVID, but we're seeing those numbers, you know, going up significantly. So we're hoping to get back to those numbers. I think most libraries dropped by like 20 to 30% during COVID. So we're seeing the numbers increasingly when we look at the state reports for our libraries going back up. Our visitor statistics also are going up. We're over 69,000. That's an average of over 1,300 visitors a week. I don't know for sure the fact, but I think our our building, our town department building is probably the one that gets the most traffic of all town departments. So it gives you a sense of how much use it gets on a daily basis. You know, our door counts were over 69,000. We're seeing those going back up, and we're still trying to catch up to where we were pre-COVID. Library membership, it goes up, it fluctuates, you know, it's gone up since 22, so we're excited to see that number go back up. Programs, we were up by 450, we had attendance, again, a pretty significant increase compared to 22. And then you can see some of our usage in terms of our databases and website views and Wi-Fi sessions. We thank Corey for that because of our server room. That's why we do so well with that. He does a really good job. And you can see our meeting room bookings also went up significantly. For some reason this last year, particularly our study rooms are getting a huge, we're seeing a lot of demand for those items. So I think we're pleased to see where our numbers are going as we see them going up. And you know, our collections are probably, in terms of the corporation's funding, is one of our biggest cost drivers, particularly electronic databases. We see that cost going up more and more, and those are the areas that we see the most usage. That is one thing that the corporation also covers. It also covers electronic resources for both Etna and the Howe. So Etna does not have to pay for their electronic resources just because it's easier in terms of how it's billed and the subscriptions, and we just take that cost over as opposed to trying to divvy that up amongst the two libraries. So we try ways that we can support and subsidize also some smaller libraries. One of the things the corporation helps fund is our New York Times subscription. We pay in a little bit more because we have the highest usage, but we help offset a lot of the smaller libraries that are part of that subscription to help support, ensure that all the local libraries, you know, smaller libraries around us are able to afford something like a subscription to those types of subscriptions and costs. So year in review, this is, you know, we did our general author talks, writing workshops, lecture series, our summer reading programs. We, you know, trying to do more world music performances and get a more diverse, broad range of programming. We're extra proud and excited about this year. We did this author series interview program. It's called Check This Out. It's mostly all virtual, and it's a partnership with a host, Rachel Beerbaum, who used to be a local resident. She's moved to Boston, but she's a bestseller author, and we partnered with her, and our staff, Jared, Dinesh, and Megan Coleman, have been producers with her of the show, and this past year got picked up by New Hampshire Public Radio. So the show airs on Sundays, so it's been really excited and feels like we're in the big leagues by getting aired on that. So it kind of shows you some of the collaborative and great projects that our staff is able to do and work with other partnerships. Yeah, I think those are a general overview. And I think our goals for next year, obviously we were able to bring in a teen librarian full-time and children's librarian the last couple of years. So we're looking to expand our teen programming. She's been offering a lot of great new creative programming. We got a teen advisory board that's been active. As she just did the other night, it was a masquerade murder mystery event after hours, and had over 20 teens come to that, and it was quite the event, and they had a lot of fun, so that was exciting. And then expansion of our summer reading program, and obviously offering more Zoom room programming and community training. We were lucky to get more ARPA funding from the town, thanks to Alex, and we're adding a second Zoom room, so we can use that other room as well to make it more accessible to more community groups, which also included new tables, so we were excited about that. And you know, completing our library strategic plan, which we've been working on this past year. One of the main things that came up, which I guess I shouldn't say was surprising, but people, particularly parents, asking for more weekend and evening programming for children, for parents after work wanting to come in. So those are one of the key pieces that came out from that strategic plan. We were excited. We put a survey out, and within like 2 or 3 days we had over 200 responses So that was a little, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, it's Hanover, we have a really supportive community, so. I think the next slide, I think that's where we're at. I think you'll see an increase in the personnel, where we're asking for a 10-hour part-time position to help with those weekend and evening programming requests that we've gotten from the community. And I think we're also asking installation for security cameras in the meeting rooms, just because we are getting more technology in there. We also have a piano that gets used quite a bit. Sometimes we don't know who's pulled the wires and what's going on, so sometimes it's helpful to do that. I don't know if any of you are familiar with our Bach group, who has been there over 30 years, so if you ever come in on Friday mornings, you may get serenaded. Yep, and I think those are our main key areas. Any questions, thoughts?
The question, may I ask a question? With kind of we're exploring a policy that may have an impact on the part-time employees, because I noticed that you've got 12 or 16 up to 20-hour per week. With the change in our policy going from Hanover's policy to the state policy, it's my understanding, to 30 hours a week, is that will you see a shift in?
I was probably one of the strongest
Yes.
proponents for that change.
This is the impetus for looking.
Yeah, that's been really challenging because, I mean, a lot of times we try to stray under that threshold, which is also not fair to employees, so you're keeping them at if you're gonna keep them at 19 hours, you might as well give them the 20, but you're keeping them from getting benefits, so we're having all these positions within 10 or 15 hours, which is really hard to make a living or even keep a part-time job, so that's been a challenge for us. We see kind of that turnover with that, and it takes time to get new people and retrain them over and over, and they're gonna leave because you can live up 10 or 15 hours unless it's someone who's retired and that's the perfect position for them, but that's also a challenge to find that right person. So I think expanding those hours makes it I think more palatable for someone who wants a 20-25 hour position, and it's the return on investment for us is better because we're able to invest more in that person. We're still at that point where obviously we can't get them close to the 35 because we get to the benefits, which is an increase, a significant increase. I think what we've been trying to do in the last several years through attrition is really consolidate positions, and we've been able to do some of that. When I came in, we were definitely management heavy, so we were able to, in a couple of those retirements, restructure and kind of make some of our key positions full-time. And obviously the cost is lower because when you've had someone here who's been here 30 years, that is gonna definitely change. But we've seen the benefits in that tenfold, particularly with, you can see that in the programming. We had 2 adult services, which is Megan Coleman and Jared Dinesh, who've been here many years and were part-time for a long time. And when one of our management positions retired, we dissolved that and we're able to make them full-time, and we're seeing the benefits of having high quality staff. But yes, I think that will be helpful and benefit.
Thank you.
That's really smart. Any other questions for Board?
Come on over. Okay. Actually, as always, Ruby has done a wonderful job, so my question is really just minimal. I was looking at the spreadsheet earlier, and I see that full-time salaries are going up by 2% and part-time salaries by 5%, and then we see that $13,000 for the extra hours, and maybe some of that's benefits. But I was just wondering, I couldn't really figure out which of those 2 lines the extra 13 is fitting on.
Yeah, so I think actually, and I haven't spoken directly to Ruby about this, but I think we need to circle back and actually take a look at some of the staffing and the numbers to make sure that everything is included and that all the extra hours are there. So I think it's a fair question.
Okay,
But
so
I think
just-
that we need to circle back, and this is one of the budget that I think needs additional work on the staff.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say that was the one place that it just didn't,
Yeah.
you know. And then, I think that from what I've read, so the increase in the info tech, 9,400, but is that the cameras, are the cameras in there?
No, I think that is our computer replacement, which is the IT, because we're on schedule
Yeah.
to have those.
Okay,
So many-
and so does that correspond?
Yeah, it's an especially big year for the Howe. I think it corresponds to COVID, when a lot of things were added, and so we're in that fourth year after, and those are replacements for those.
Okay,
So the cameras are not reflected in this yet.
okay, so the cameras have to be added, or maybe they're in DPW, I don't know.
I'll take it as a no.
Okay, all right, well, so we will see more later. Thank you.
Wish list.
Look it up.
Ruby, that was fun, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
You
you,
know,
Ruby.
when I was in the Hanover, the Howe board, there was a book that the then librarian, who was the librarian back then?
Mary?
Eccles.
What?
Yeah, Mary, handed out, what was the name of that book?
The Emily Howe.
Yeah, it was fun to read.
Yeah.
I had so much fun
You
reading
get that when you join the corporation.
Yes, you do.
I still have mine on my shelf.
I'm sure you've read it all.
I read mine, read the
It
whole
was,
thing.
well,
Yes.
it's fortunately not a very thick book.
Yeah. Did you read
Still
it,
get credit
Nancy?
for reading it.
Yeah.
I was
No,
never
no.
given it, because
You were never given it?
as a select board appointee, I'm,
Oh,
I got it, how come she didn't get it?
okay. Well, I'll give you mine.
oh, great,
I have several
I've
copies
read
in
it.
my office.
I'll come by,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you.
Thanks, Herbie.
Thank you.
thank you, Janice, for
Thanks.
being her.
Norm,
Thank you.
Norm.
Hi, Norm.
My name's Norm Bernache, I'm the Director of Assessing, and that's for 4 years now. Seems like yesterday.
It does.
Except you lost your,
First of all, assessing is pretty boring unless we come to the year of a revaluation, and then it gets really interesting for everyone involved, especially for myself and my staff. Basically, the assessing department consists of 3,600 parcels. It was really like 3,400 before, but what we did was with Dartmouth, we separated all their buildings. There used to be 20, sometimes 20 and 30 buildings on one lot. We separated those all into separate parcels because some were taxable, some weren't. And then with the building permit process, it made it easier to identify those buildings in the building permit process rather than having to deal with 20 or 30 cards on one tax map and lot. So that number is a little inflated for that reason, but they're actually physical buildings separately assessed and so forth. Basically, we're monitored by the state of New Hampshire annually. We revise taxable inventory, including all the new construction that Rob talks about. We're responsible for reviewing all the charitable, educational, religious exemptions, elderly, disabled, veteran, and solar exemptions. We've been working hard on the compliance with solar exemptions. We're just about at 100% compliance. I think we're on our 4th letter now. We were just about to sic the Solarize Hanover committee on the non-compliant folks in a sort of a indiscreet way, but we haven't had to do that yet. So that's a good.
You got my letter, didn't you?
Every 5 years, we're required to produce new values anew. We're talking about that now. That comes up quicker than you think. We have to prepare for that. We expect to prepare for that this coming summer and work towards that. Start modeling over again. Thankfully, the market seems to have stabilized. Houses are on the market longer, so we're looking at some more consistent data. After the 2021 revaluation, we had just the market was just so unpredictable. So we're seeing with the higher interest rates and so on and so forth that the market has stabilized. Some properties are on the market, so there's more of a balance between buyer and seller to some respect. The department consists of Sue, who has been here for, I think 28 years, 29 years. I have about 40 years in the business, and we have Jerry, who's been here about a year and a half, so we're competing with Rob in terms of experience, and unfortunately I have most of that, so. And we have Jerry Roberts, who's my real estate appraiser, rapidly advancing through the certification levels. That was the goal as part of our succession plan. In our business, we're certified to do certain things at certain levels, and there's the job of in this case, the real estate appraiser, whatever you want to call them, has really 3 certification levels to then become my level, which is an assessment supervisor. But I also look at that in 3 levels. One is more of an administrator. A more advanced one is evaluator, which I do. And the third is the litigator. So those 3, that means we litigate cases and we defend the cases as an expert witness or the prosecutor before the New Hampshire Board of Tax and Land Appeals, or an expert witness in Superior Court. So the goal is to, for someone in this position, because we do presently, the expectation is that we do the revaluations in-house. So we don't hire outside consultants, and we're married to the data, so to speak, and we live it every day. And so the idea is that we know the data better than anyone, and we own it. And that's to be able to do that. So
Norm, how long does it to get to your type of position, your level? How long does that typically take a person?
It depends how fast a person like myself wants to mentor someone to deal with all the advanced. You know, you have all the coursework. You have 4 or 5 years of attaining all the first coursework in the different levels of experience that you need to be exposed to. And the final levels before you get to my level of certification is you have to have tried cases at the Board of Land and Tax Appeals at a minimum. So, for example, Adrian, who had worked in Londonderry, who was my assistant before during the reval, I actually brought her back after she left and went to Londonderry to try one of our BTLA cases we had from the revaluation, to give her that experience and mentor her through that process. And so her certification level is advancing a little quicker. Generally speaking, there's sort of a little turf battle in some communities. The larger they are, you know, the assessor wants to do all that and doesn't want to give those responsibilities to the folks under them. And my goal is, you know, if someone wants to do my job, they can do it any day they want. You know, because it's
Thank you.
yeah.
So can I just ask a follow-on question then? How many hours a month, for instance, are you mentoring Jerry Roberts?
Every
You
day.
use the term
Every day.
mentoring.
Every day.
Oh, okay.
Just for instance, as an example, today we had a taxpayer that came in and said, well, my house is, you know, back when was pretty equal, and then then my taxes went down 15%, and then now they're all 5 and 600,000, and mine's 800,000, but we have the same house.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to readily answer that question until I had all the information. So I gave the issues to Jerry to explore, to say, what do you think is wrong? What is the explanation here? Is our assessments right? And if they are right, what are the reasons for that? And if they're wrong, so I'm having them do things like that so we can answer the more complex questions as it pertains to the assessment process.
Thank you.
So last year we completed sales inspections. We send out letters every month as the sales come in, and we attempt to inspect all those properties. We actually go out and measure them. We send out sales questionnaires. We review MLS. So we get the best data we can on all the properties. Not everyone responds to the letters. They're not required to. But then we go out and we visit the property to make sure that our information is correct on that property. And what we're calling it is what it actually is. We continue to do the data verification program, which is to divide the town into, say, every 5 years to re-inspect properties, keep data fresh and accurate. It doesn't make any sense to do it all at once. It's too burdensome, and it ends up being more cost effective this way. As a result of the 21 revaluation, we had 4 New Hampshire Board of Tax and Land Appeals cases. The revaluation from 18, I think we had 20 detail A cases, and we had 67 Superior Court cases. So,
And about 400
abatement applications, right?
that we served that committee.
So
So
you
as
only
a-
had 8 last year, is that right?
But it wasn't a
Yes.
reval.
And to date this year, we have 4 or 5 days left. Probably shouldn't say that, but for people to appeal for the 23 tax year, and we only have 4 abatement appeals. One of them is the house on Greensboro Road that was destroyed by fire a few years ago. So that's obviously, a no-brainer, so to speak. But of the 4 cases we had, one withdrew, and we won the other 3 hands down, 100% in favor of the town. So it's a pretty good track record. They were reasonably difficult cases, but we won all those. Like Etna said, we have 8 abatement cases from last year. We continue to develop Jerry. He went from a measurer lister, now he's certified as an assistant assessor. That allows him more responsibilities and more tasks he can take on without my direct supervision. In other words, being with him, and I don't have to necessarily sign off on those things. He's passed some pretty advanced assessment courses. We continue to, the certification requires certain courses, and the Department of Revenue used to certify us. Now we're under the Offices of Licensing and Professional Development, and now they're on a 2-year. We were on a 5-year certification level, recertification. Now we're on a 2-year. So I don't know what that's going to mean for if I'm going to have to recertify, if they're going to lower the amount of hours. In other words, I think it was 50 hours before of classroom work. Now it's, and that was over 5 years. Now it's 2 years. We don't know what the hours are going to be yet because they just took it over, and they're developing that now. And Sue obviously has been a great asset to the department for many, many years. She's treats the customers and taxpayers like with kid gloves, and she knows where all the bones are buried, so to speak. Having the time she spent here. And what I'm really proud of, and I hope people would want to use it, is I sent it to the select board, to Alex, I think, and then to the Board of Assessors, and I've promoted it somewhat, but we have a new Power BI analytics. It's very powerful. We're going to be updating it every 6 months with some data, because we try to, as we have a working product, we bill twice a year, and so that, and then the first bill, that's sort of the final number until we reach the second billing, which is the final number. So we try to publish the data that is based on our final numbers rather than a work in progress. We don't want to alarm anyone with if an assessment changes, or we have a work in progress. So that's our goal right now, but we can change it on a monthly basis for certain information. It's just the assessment data changes every 6 months. And I would encourage people, there's many slides in there with definitely all kinds of slicers, and it's a lot more powerful from not from a standpoint of modeling, but from the standpoint of getting results. It takes me a little longer in the assessment software to get the results that this is producing almost instantaneously. One of the things I determined right away was when the revaluation company that we used had what we call the median-sized house, and that should be your sort of your starting point for adjustments on square footage, and they were off about 200 square feet. And this, this visually showed you what the results are, what the answers are, and you can move them around and do more than one query at a time and filter it and keep filtering the data down to results that you might want to see. The main objective moving forward is staff development and succession planning. I would at some point like to get through a reevaluation and move to either some kind of hopefully part-time role with some supervisory role, and still be able to mentor Jerry and or whoever. Right now, that's the succession planning that I'm looking forward to, and I hope Sue stays around for
Forever.
during that time.
Yeah, we're all hoping.
Yeah. And so, and additionally, like I said, we're pretty boring. So we just have statutory deadlines we have to meet for certain things, and they seem to all come in the spring or in the fall, and we just work away during the summer and the winter months.
Thank you. Norm, the degree of stability and expertise you've provided us has been, well,
Really
so
grateful.
appreciated and invaluable, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question. Are we as a town, Norm, helping to pay for Jerry's courses? Because they seem to be quite a few, and now with the change in the state, maybe to come up even more frequently. Is that part of the our staff development?
Yeah, we had a reasonable staff development budget because we have to be recertified, and we have to continue. We have to have continuing education to be recertified, to continue to do the job that we do, or we don't get recertified. They're pretty strict on that. And we have actually added a little bit of. We have added $1,568 to professional development, which is coursework.
Good. Great. Does the town,
Thank you.
does the state add significant additional costs to recertify you and Jerry? Is that a moneymaker for them?
Yeah, we don't. The Department of Revenue, when they were recertifying us, they didn't charge anything.
Yeah.
But we have, for as long as I've been an assessor, worked with the Department of Revenue, and we sort of co-educated the assessing population, so to speak.
Yeah.
They would educate, take on some of the role. We would have joint classes. Our professional association would take on some of those, which I volunteered to teach part of the state statute course on how to actually run an assessor's office, and that's sort of my broad instructional end to it. But besides that, our budget is pretty boring. It's mostly
Boring and very well run. So thank you for all of us.
Yeah.
Any questions, board? Kari?
Yes.
I didn't do it.
Well, actually, the first thing, Norm, is that I wanted to apologize to you publicly, because at a finance committee meeting the other day, we were looking at the projected increase in the net assessed valuation, and I actually had the temerity to say that it didn't make sense. And of course, after I left the meeting and I realized, oh no, it's April 1st of this year, and so on, that for me to have said that it didn't make sense was just off base and did not do justice to all the time you have spent explaining things to me. So I had to clear the air on that one.
If that's the worst criticism I get in one day, I'm very happy with that.
It meant to be an apology.
Yeah. So was that in regards to expected growth in the grand list, yeah. And there's many reasons for that. I remember talking, I think I had a short conversation with Ellen about the past years. I don't remember speaking to the school district this year, and I may have, but I remember talking about a $15 or $16 million number last year. And I'm projecting 10 because I don't know what's gonna happen with, there's a little fluctuation in sort of the West Wheelock, the West Wheelock properties. If some of those properties come down, we lose that. If they come down before April 1st, I don't know that. So it's a conservative estimate. So I'd rather err on the side of when I'm giving an estimate. I mean, I would never want to be in a position where I say it's going to be 20 million and all of a sudden, human nature says, wow, I only got 14, I told them 20 million, I only have 14. Where can I find that? And that's not how I operate. And the other wild card is the way we treat the utility property. As our ratio goes down, if the utility property doesn't grow, in other words, they don't put new transformers, new poles, new wires fast enough to adjust for the ratio, that's a negative adjustment on our grand list. So I don't know where that's going to fly. They report to us in April what their net construction growth was, and that's offset by the lower ratio.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I knew that my initial thinking was wrong, but now you've given me even sort of a better understanding. One of the questions I have heard though is there likely to be a revaluation of land value on West Wheelock because of the zoning changes, making it more valuable?
We've talked about that. We haven't. It gets into a really difficult analysis because it's what they call a highest and best use analysis, and it's sometimes it's almost let it happen then do it. But there's some properties that may function fine the way they are, and they may never, their land value may never exceed what their land and building are worth now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a function of the highest and best use, and that's a pretty involved analysis. So you would be looking at each of those individual properties and then trying to do that analysis, which is pretty difficult. It's very time consuming. So we've talked about it. If the TIF came in, that would be a lot easier from that perspective. In other words, if the TIF was developed right away, we would have the values that we have today, and then the growth would be the growth. And however the math worked to pay back the bond would be how the math worked. So that's the easy. That's the quickest way out. When Alex and I and Rob had talked about that previously, it was, well, that saves me a lot of work of having to jump into that realm of maybe not adjusting assessments on some properties, but then really what I'm going to say, pushing people out. There's potential that some properties would be, their land value might far exceed what they're presently assessed for. So
right.
Yeah. So that's the that's sort of the dilemma that we're facing right now.
Okay. And then maybe this one is just for Ellen. I just see that the full-time salaries in total are going up 9,000, and that wasn't quite in line with other places, but I understand it's a very senior staff, 2 out of the 3 and so on, so I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're seeing in some of the departments' budgets is that the 2024 budget comparison isn't necessarily accurate. So another sort of iteration that I'm doing is really taking a look at forecasting off of our actuals and then adding on the increases. So I think that, again, that's where there's more work to do for explanations. I'm not concerned about the overall dollars in the budget. But I think that they're, again, as we refine what the actual increases are, we'll take a look at that and refine that. So I think it's a fair question.
And I didn't bring this up, but at the finance committee meeting, there was definitely a request that that the town explained very well the increases in staffing costs. Because it's sort of the third year in a row and everything, so that's in part why I guess I always look at these things anyway, but there's even all the more reason to this year. And I guess one of the, now that you bring it up, that that the increases could be more of a reflection of the fiscal year 24 numbers. I know that in the contracts, particularly for DPW and police, there were the one-time lump sum payments in 24. Did those apply to other staff that are not in unions? So
they were across the board.
Okay.
Everyone got
All
that.
right. So the 24 numbers would include the one-time lump sum numbers.
Correct.
Whereas in 22 they came out of HR, but in 24 they're in the department.
They are in the departments for
Okay.
24. I'll just, point out that we are still in the final stages of some of the agreements, so not all of the elements of the comp increases are final. So once those are final, we'll go through, again, with fine detail and be able to provide you that level of support.
Yeah.
I'm just sticking with the theme, and I'll finish it. Prior to 2020, there were 2 full-time and 1 contracted Jerry. And now in 2020, we've had 3 full-time. And I think through the succession planning, I'm brought in at a high level and Jerry's sort of at a lower level. And, as things move around, and I think there's, in the future, I don't want to handcuff any future director, but I think that there's savings in the budget, just based on, just the way the department's structured because of 2018, the revaluation of 2018, so.
So when you say that you think there's savings, you mean going forward or right?
For another day.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Well, thank you so much, again, for everything, as Atlas said. I know we all appreciate it.
Thank you, Norm, that was awesome. It's the 7th, it's the bottom of the 7th, no, it's between the 7th. We're about to go into the bottom of the 7th inning. So let's take a 5-minute stretch, and really, we only have a couple more to go, but I think everybody who has already presented really appreciate your being here, but I know we've got a long work day tomorrow, so please feel free to
Drive home.
yeah.
Because we're gonna start singing Sweet Caroline soon. Right?
Yes.
Isn't that your job, Athos,
I got it
as the
right
chair? Between the 7th and the stretch?
We'll watch it in a couple days. You don't have to, you don't have to listen.
I remember you actually started like the day
You watched the film.
can copy the whole.
Wait a minute, Carrie, you didn't get offered a, would you like to watch it?
Yeah,
Deb?
from
Deb,
No.
They have like different.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't Carrie.
Oh, I see.
The color
Yeah, just
popcorn?
like- yeah, okay.
Yeah, they usually pick up the
Like there,
I have a night.
he's all sure
I can't
about it, he's
read it
ready to go. He's gonna whip through his presentation.
Carrie,
Yes.
please tell Deb that we don't have these late meetings just so we'll get treats, but we really appreciate the treats.
Okay, whatever. I'll pass that along.
Thanks. Hey, hi.
Michael, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh.
Would you introduce yourself and
Absolutely.
please take it away?
My name is Michael Gilbert. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief and Fire Marshal for the town of Hanover. And since September, I've been the acting chief. I've worked for the town just over 25 years. So as we go through, starting with this slide, I just want to highlight some things on this slide. Rather than taking pictures of calls or interesting like that, I wanted to look at so in the upper left corner is our annual awards and badge pinning ceremony. So 2 years ago, we started doing this. We do badge pinnings for new hires and promotions, and then we do awards for things like Life Saving Award and Unit Citation, Firefighter of the Year, and EMS Provider of the Year. I feel this is really important because I think so often in our daily grind, we forget how good we're doing. And every year we give out probably 2 to 4 Life Saving Awards, which are life saved, and 2 and 3 unit citations, which is the whole shift doing something, a call, a rescue, or something like that. So it really brings it back to them that they do make a difference. So I thought that was really important to do, and we've gotten really good feedback from that, and we'll continue doing that every fall. The top right, I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation, but one of our shifts was recognized at a state level this year for a call they were on. And then the bottom one is kind of the more lighter-hearted part of our job, where I think we forget, next to emergency responses, I think the public relations part of our job is really important, whether it's education, touch a truck, or things like that. And this is Firefighter Joe Peck, it's his niece, so we got permission to have the picture up there. But it's kind of that upload part of the job that I think we forget about, I think is important. So here's our staff. As far as the shifts this year, we've been pretty stable. As you can see in the administrative part, we're not so stable. I'm the one person standing. So, with Chief McMillan retiring in September, and then 3 weeks ago, our administrative assistant left us. So she went on to work for a family business. Great opportunity for her. It just put us in a weird spot. I'd like to say that I'm doing all this, but I'm not. I've got the support of the entire department. Everybody stepped up and helped out, along with the town manager's office, finance, and HR, who gets calls from me regularly. So it's been a workload, but it's been very doable, and I appreciate everybody's help on that. But there's our shifts. I will say as we talk about the budget, each captain of the shifts, and you can see their responsibility: the training, maintenance, communication, buildings, and emergency medical. The captains have a part of our budget. They develop it and they manage it. So at least part of our operational budget. So as we go through, you'll see some of the different line items that they do. This is our call line. It's kind of how we quantify what we do and our value, I think. If you look at the total volumes of call on the left, in 2021, that's a little bit of post-COVID. Pre-COVID, we were averaging around 2,000 calls a year. And I think 2020, we're actually like in the 1600s. Big drop, obviously, with the college being remote and everything, that had a big impact on us. We've kind of recovered, continue to increase our call volume. And then to the right is just our medical by the towns that we service. We're probably a 60-65 medical, and like that 35-40 fire call percentages, which is for most fire departments, I think, is a little skewed. But I think we do so many fire calls because of the campus and all the fire alarms we have. You'll see in the false alarms, kind of 2/3 of the way down on the left. About 500 calls mostly those are fire alarms, and that's just because we have so many fire alarms in town, which is a good thing. It's required by code, but that's a big part of our response. All right. So just some of our acknowledgements in the last year. Obviously, Chief McMillan, after 10 years, had retired in the fall. Certainly got our department to where it is today. Corey had talked about our house alerting system. and an increase in budget there. What that is it's dispatch CAD, but it's how we're dispatched. So it's now, everything's computerized, but it's a computer voice that dispatches us. So for us, it's really good because it's the same voice, the same rhythm, and same cadence. So it's very easy for us to hear. We also have in the firehouse a ticker tape that shows the call, so if we can't hear it or as we're getting in the truck, we can see what the call is. So the House of Learning system, and it's not just for us, it's the whole mutual aid. And just because he's here, Evan White here kind of spearheaded this project and literally spent hundreds of hours setting this up. It's very complex, but it's been very beneficial. Initially, as you would expect, our dispatchers were not really impressed by being taken over by a computer. But it actually, most of them have really shown an advantage. The windstorm that we had this winter, where before they'd have to take the information, put the caller on hold, dispatch us, then go back. They can just keep typing, stay on with the 911 caller, push a button, and it dispatches us. So they're able to get calls out easier while staying on. So it's been very beneficial to us. I think it's been a good thing to do. So we also installed an air handling system to do an air exchange in the firehouse. We had some air quality tests that weren't great. Also, 30-year-old carpet that would now make linoleum upstairs, but the air handling system is going to hopefully take that a lot of the air quality away. We've had some employees that just, when they leave work, are just congested, and we found there was some things in the air. So that was a big thing for us this year. We renovated our second floor bathroom. It was the 1974 bathroom, so it's been updated, it's been great. And then for the first time, we actually upstairs have a female bathroom and shower. We'd never had that before. So we now have a shower and we do have a female that works for us. One of the things in the fire service, I don't think we embrace technology as well as others, and we tend to be a little bit behind. So a lot of our stuff is still paper, and I think when we started talking about technology that we do, it's on a spreadsheet and then in a Google Drive. So this year we purchased a scheduling and overtime hiring software, which honestly I think is one of the best things we did. It manages all of our schedules, and if there's a hole, push the button, it sends it out to be filled in overtime. And it looks at, do we need a paramedic, do we need an officer, and they do preferences there. Where before, it literally was all day for somebody to try to hire a position. You have to call, if you didn't get them, you have to wait for a certain amount of time. So this program takes it all, and it's been really good. So I think you'll see in our IT budget, and I think Corey talked about it, a little bit of increase in that line item. But we're trying to do some of these things, and it's making us more efficient. So that was one of the things that's been really beneficial to us. And then the bottom, I talked about it before. So our B shift was Captain Letchen's shift. With the Hartford and Lebanon Fire Department's B shifts were called to it's just in Plainfield for a vehicle that went off the road into the Connecticut River in the winter. Brutally cold night. It actually floated for a while and got hung up on some rocks. We deployed a raft with our staff in it that had to paddle down to then be hooked onto a rope system, be lowered into the rapids to rescue the person that luckily got on top of the vehicle, and then brought back up and using rope systems to bring them up a bank to get them back on land.
Wow.
So all three shifts were recognized in Concord this past fall, and they got a state unit citation for their rescue. So a really good thing for them, and it's nice to see. All right, next. So some of the things we're looking at this year, we're going to put some money into equipment. So we rely or require our people to basically, you put anybody in the world, getting stuck anywhere, that we get asked to rescue them. So sometimes we're looking at is somebody on the top of Moose Mountain, maybe not this winter, but some really cold winters. We want to make sure our staff has the appropriate gear so we don't send them out there and get more hurt. We've been working on this for years. But some of the cold rescue gear we're looking at doing, so we're going to continue that to make sure they're outfitted to be safe for the rescues that they're required to do. We also see a big increase in some of our training line items. I will say with that, Captain Mary manages that, and there's a big bump in one line item, but overall his budget was between like 4 or 5% increase. So he had a big increase in one line item, but he also zero level funded many others. So he just took importance, unlike Rob and Norm, who don't have a huge training budget. We had over 2,200 hours of training that we logged last year. That's sending them out to classes and also internal classes that we do our in-service training. So, and it's important for our job because of the wide range of disciplines that we have. So we're fortunate in that case, and certainly we're trying to increase some of those now, and you'll see that increase in one of the line items. We've also updated some of our ambulance equipment. A lot of this is right up of Athos's neck of the woods. So this year we're looking at purchasing patient ventilators, which we currently have, but they're very rudimentary, like pediatric and adult. So the new ventilator can do a lot of different things like BiPAP and CPAP, which is just positive pressure that helps air exchange or gas exchange in the lungs. So with that, new IV pumps, that a lot of our medications now are required to go through IV pumps, and then video laryngoscopes, which is just the intubation, but it actually has a monitor that we can see, and it's a better success rate for intubations. A lot of this was driven from COVID, or realizing that, some of these, not just COVID, but some of these other, respiratory illnesses, that it's important to have these things. So we are having a big push right now to try to update some of our medical equipment. We're also, as I said before, our building was built in 1974. A lot of it was not upgraded until recently, and we're slowly working through different places to do that. The bathrooms, some of the carpeting, changing a little vinyl, and now we're looking at like our watch room, which was set up from 1974 to sit and do paper documentation, and it's just a flat counter. So we're looking at eventually different ways to make that into workstations that have we have computers in there now that are ergonomically correct for what they actually do for paper nowadays. So we're going to continue to work with buildings to do that. And then obviously a big thing is to fill the chief's and administrative assistant position. As you would expect, not having a department head, especially for this extended period of time, there can be a lot of anxiety with the staff, but they've done very well. And I try to communicate with them on where we're at with that, but they've done a great job. A lot of questions, but I thought they've handled it very well. And then we're looking at our callbacks. So we have a duty crew of 4 or 5, and when they get tied up, we call staff back in to fill the station. We always want to maintain 4 in the building, and that's for our ISO rating, which is the group that sets our insurance ratings for the town. And years ago, they came in and evaluated us when we had staff of 4, or shifts of 4, Minuteman at 3, so we're always at 3. They consider a fire response of 4 people. So they looked at a certain amount of run volume, and they said, most of them are at 3, we're going to make you an ISO rating of 10, which would be a huge impact to our insurance ratings. And it's rated from 1 to 10, 10 being you have no fire department, 1 being like Las Vegas or LA. So that's when we got the Safe Route grant to do 5 people on a shift, and we always maintain 4. So if the ambulance goes out, it's going to be tied up, we try to call 2 back up for coverage. The problem with, I think, our current generation and the life work balance is people work there 42 hours and then they're gone. So we don't have as many people coming back to cover the firehouse. Some of that, as telling Max earlier, about a third of our staff does not live within that 20-30 minute time frame that we have, and then 2/3 that do. So how do we incentivize them to come back and cover the firehouse, and then to maintain that? And there's some projects, some things we're looking at to try to help that, but it's certainly a concern of mine is making sure we can cover ourselves. We can always sit there and say we got our mutual aid partners, but it gets to a point where it's not mutual aid anymore if they're constantly covering us. So how do we cover our calls? And I think that's something we need to look for moving forward. And then it's not on here, but the last thing that I'm looking at is how do we, the fire service is finally starting to see a drop in people that are applying for our positions. And certainly the quality of people, not that they're bad people, but they don't have the training and experience that we used to have. So how do we hire people with little to no training and bring them on board without costing us a lot of overtime? So there's some programs that I'm working at to hopefully help that. And also I don't want to hire a bunch of people that live an hour away. So we really look at our Upper Valley partners and people and see if we can recruit those. So that's kind of my 2 biggest concerns in the fire service right now. But we're kind of working through that right now. I'm just working with Alex and Ellen about our callbacks and how to incentivize. It was like, we asked for like 1,600 callbacks last year, which is like people to come back, and we got about 750, 800 that did it. So about half the time we're not covered to what we need to be at the level we have. So it's a concern of ours. Yeah. Next. Before I let Alex explain kind of more of this, the other thing that we looked at this year was on the revenue side of things is I worked with Ellen this fall. We had not really updated our rate fee schedule for the ambulance for like 8 or 10 years. And so I worked with our billing company, our ambulance billing company, and they kind of did averages, and we found that we were significantly behind. So we're slowly increasing that over the next couple of years to try to get caught up and do some a little bit more revenue on that side. And then the other thing that Chief McMillan started last year was the inspection services. So kind of part of my part of my job is reviewing sprinkler and fire alarms systems and then doing the final inspections. And Rob Hausman put into their permitting fee, it's 45 cents for each one of those per 1,000. And when it was put in there, but it was working with Ellen, it doesn't look like it was ever like built out to be collected and put into the fire fund. So we're working on that right now to try to capture that. The program's there, we just really never set it up, so we're trying to get that to capture that right now. So that's basically, unless Alex, whatever you want to talk about this slide.
I don't think so. I think the S&W is not gonna, I'm not sure if that's gonna match what's in the spreadsheet. I don't think so. But doesn't. So there's not any changes to fire outside of the townwide changes and the union negotiations, but there's not any sort of, some of the other departments we mentioned, there was a couple other changes that we had made. So there's nothing sort of outside of that process for fire. Which is why that box is blank.
I have a question about your, the ladder truck.
So that's a frustrating situation for us. So 2.5, 3 months ago, our radiator went in the ladder truck, what I felt was a simple part, and we found that it was not simple, it was a custom made, and it's basically been out of service for 2.5 months right now. The expected shipment date for the new radiator is, I think, March 14th. So we're basically gonna go all winter without the ladder truck. It's a simple part that, and Don Foster from Fleet hunted down everything and just couldn't find it. We just had to go with the manufacturer to make us one, or whoever they used to make.
And this is the old, I mean, didn't we?
No, that's not that old.
The ladder truck?
Yeah.
It's due to replace in like 8 years,
Yeah.
Okay.
but we still have some time. We just last year had it repainted because it was getting a lot of bubbling to get us through that 8 years. But it's nearing, it's at the end of its life, but we still have 8 years on it.
Oh, and our mutual aid partners has something equivalent to that. I thought we were the only ones who had that.
So we're the only ones that have a tower
Yeah.
platform. Lebanon, Hartford, even Norwich has a small straight ladder stick. But we're the only one in the extended mutual aid that has a tower. And it's used a lot. I know it's not always in Hanover, but I mean, the reason we have it is because of the dormitories and
Right.
the high risk of life safety there.
So
Understood.
that tower probably wouldn't work on a 125-foot building.
Now,
Okay, just, that's something else that should be part of that
How many
study.
stories is that?
125 feet, that's at least 10 stories.
yeah, our ladder's a 95 foot, and that's 95 foot. We always have
Yeah,
reach
yeah.
issues, reaching over lawns and stuff. So that's always a concern. I mean, Vale Remsen being 8 stories is our largest building in town, but most of them are that 4-story, which we can if we can have good access. And that's a big fight I do with plans review. Is I'd love to have access to 360 around the building. It doesn't always work for me. So
That would be
Main
tough.
Street for
yeah,
example.
Main Street, this is a perfect fit. It works well
Yeah.
for that, and it's a very safe platform for us to work off of. But that's been a frustrating experience, especially during the winter when it's our highest use for it.
Thanks, Mike.
Board, Nancy?
When you talk about inspection and that 45 cents and so forth, will, when Rob gets his inspection team,
Yeah.
fully staffed, will that help you? Will that take some of the burden away from you, or?
No, they're looking at something that we don't currently inspect at all, like that rental housing.
Okay.
That was something we've been looking at. It's like we can't inspect everything. There's a lot of things we don't inspect.
Right.
There's certain things I would inspect. There's certain things that Ryan Burkowski and Shane inspect.
Yeah.
But there's things that we just can't because we don't have the staffing.
Right.
And we thought our highest risk was that rental housing position. And for the most part, they're good, but we want to make sure that those renters are protected. And there's things that need to be updated. But that won't add. That'll just take on an inspection that we currently don't do.
Oh, okay.
We've had the discussion, not that it's going to happen soon. Do we need a fire inspector? Because again, there's a lot we don't inspect, like commercial properties, storefronts, a lot of the college classrooms. Lower priority, the rental housing was the high priority.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need that, but right now it's not. It's been a discussion, but I don't think anything we need to look at right now.
Thanks.
Board?
Great.
Carl?
So, one of the hallmarks, I think, of the fire department budget, and first of all, thank you for already going through the revenues, but they, have all these interfund transfers from general administration, general fund, money to the water department, and management information services, as well as, billing to ambulance. You cover the waterfront, and there's a lot of changes in all of those, and I don't know if, actually maybe our management team would, explain it, is there an overall reevaluation of, of what's being charged to different departments and funds, from general administration, from the general fund. And some of the things are going up, some of them are going down. So is there a overall effort to be restructuring those fees, or what's?
So I can speak to the general admin, and so the same structure that was used in the past was used, with taking a look at the percent of the overall appropriations that each department contributes to the overall budget, and then allocating portions of the overhead departments. That includes Alex and Carrie in the finance department, the clerk's office, and HR are the biggest contributors to that, and I can certainly send you the spreadsheet that maps that out. The second piece of the inter-fund charges for the general fund really has a lot to do with all the charges that come out of DPW. And I have an accounting for that. I would have a harder time speaking to those. But I think that when we're looking at some of the general admin allocations year over year, Kari, last year, really when we did the budget, that was a process that was not done on a deep dive basis. So what we're seeing is really sort of a catch up of 2 years, a little bit in those allocations.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't see it was 17%, and that's just greater than the, general budget is going up, but if there's some catch-up provision in there, as opposed to that, there was a formula change.
No formula change. The one area, and it's not necessarily it is an allocation, but the one area where I think there was a formula change, and Mike, you mentioning insurance rates, you will see a very large increase in the workers' comp insurance, and that is based on the premiums applied to the compensation. So that's directly from Primex. So that is an increase on. So that actually is our premium associated.
Is that based on experience? It's going up 98%,
It is, and I think it's, what I do need to do is do a little research as to what, how it was allocated last year. So, but I can say that this is based on, the rate that Primex is applying to our compensation.
And then to the water fund, going back to 2014 when the water company was municipalized, we went from having the cost of maintaining the hydrants determined locally as opposed to by the PUC. And so it went from like 600,000 down to 400,000, and since then it's been at 400,000, but now it's, going down by 22,000. And I wondered, is that because that is a better reflection of the actual cost of maintaining the hydrants, or if it's just, and I believe then there's a concomitant lowering of what the water company is getting. So, are the ratepayers there picking up more? I don't know if you.
I met with Peter about this, and probably he'll be a better one to explain that when he comes up.
Okay.
But from what I understand, he's starting to shift some of that $400,000 to the water company slowly over time.
Okay.
But the exact reason why, I think, other than just shifting over, I'm not sure.
Okay. So it's not that the cost.
I don't think so. I think he's working. There's always been a discussion about getting us in the general fund and trying to shift some of these costs to their actual departments. And I think he's looking at starting to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and actually they started to talk about doing that in 2014. So here we are.
We're right there.
Yeah, here we are. And then it was just again some of the Alex, you mentioned maybe the 178 isn't reflected here. Maybe it is depending upon what's included. But I just wondered.
It is.
Yeah, we just.
Oh, okay,
It
all
is.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it definitely is, up in the admin, that seems to equal it. But, New Hampshire retirement contributions going up by 1%. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I went through all the compensation and the forecast of the compensation and then applied the NHRS rate.
So this might be also a reflection of the 24 number, fiscal year 24 number, not being the base that we should have been working off of.
Yes.
Okay, and then I did just notice that fire suppression full-time salaries, it shows a 0% increase there.
So I spent extensive amount of time today validating and making sure that, first of all, we had all the staff. We had the current compensation that includes their incentives, and applying not only next year's COLA and steps, but actually the interim steps between today and June 30th, which we need to have to provide the basis for next year's compensation.
Yeah.
Again, we aren't finished with the negotiations, so there may be items in this compensation that aren't included, but I am confident, because I spent a ton of time rebuilding the numbers, that this does capture the compensation. I definitely need to take a look at and come with a good explanation as to why that comparison looks the way it does. But I spent today really making sure that at least with those elements, with the steps and the COLA, and making sure that the incentives that are currently earned are all in that compensation.
Great, and I guess my only question would be, I think that your contract has the critical staffing provision. Has that had to be used very much in this fiscal year?
No, I mean, like I said, our duty crews have been stable. It's been admin, and Alex and I talked early on, and I certainly could have put in an acting deputy chief to help me. The problem that I had with that is it would take a captain off the line, which would kill our overtime budget. So I chose just to take the beating, and like I said, there are more helping out as all the departments have. So, but no, we've not had any issues with staffing.
Of that,
not
the
yeah,
nature, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the only administrative standing. That doesn't look good for me, but.
All right, well, thank you so much.
I've got a question. Michael, does the operating in that line right there, does that 178, does that assume a new chief and a new admin assistant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
And
No, go.
I was just gonna add one thing too. I mean, you were talking about how much training the fire department does, and then there's 2,000 hours. 2,200 hours last year. And so, as most of you know, I had the opportunity to do a little bit of training with the fire department a couple months ago. Doing some of my CEUs to get my New Hampshire EMT license, and it was just great to see. I'm sort of at the very bottom of the provider end as an EMT based in from New Jersey, coming up here, but. The partnership between the fire department and the medical center was really impressive, and the relationships between a lot of the individuals, the medical directors, the MDs who do all of that for DH, and the staff in Hanover, and the other towns. There was multiple other fire departments there and another ambulance service, and I just want to make sure to kind of give them, I mean, there's a lot of amazing work that all of our departments do, and I got to see a little bit of that firsthand on fire, so it's nice. Sure, pass it along.
Did you pass?
It wasn't that sort of thing, but I would hope that I would have.
He does have an application to join the call department.
I do, that's true, it's true.
Oh, you're not
That's
in the
cool.
budget.
That's true.
Yeah, we have to pay him his overtime rate. I don't know if we can afford that.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Evan, for coming.
Alright, to butcher Athos analogy, if that was the 7th inning stretch, I'm the closer.
There you go.
I'm gonna try not to give up a run and drive us into extra innings.
Oh, right.
That's a great goal.
I really.
Thank you, Tracy.
Tracy, that's awesome.
So, and I'm not gonna read my slides, I just did some quick summaries, but, and I didn't know till a week ago I needed a photo, so, but this is the end of the night at the primary, which features one of our select board members.
Right.
But wanted to drive home, the one on the left is myself, Bobby Hitchcock, and one of the troopers. At the end of the night, we still come back here and do more work and package everything up and send it on to Concord. So the night doesn't end when we leave the gym.
No.
So I can go
But
on.
you're self-smiling, so.
That was the end of 16 hours, that, I don't know what that was, but we were really tired. So, the staff list, so I think we're unique, and last year I know that you had 2 different presentations with the clerk and the tax collector, and when I've been hired to kind of form a team, I told Ellen I wanted to present them both together. We're unique because we have both paid staff and elected and appointed officials as part of our team. So you can move on from here because I think all of you, better than most, know all my people, so.
You do.
So
Well, actually, can you go back?
Go back.
Sorry, Tracy. So
No
the
problem.
top 3 are paid positions.
Yes.
The bottom 6 are elected officials and get some stipend. Is that correct?
Yes, the supervisors with the checklist and Bobby as town clerk.
And we did raise those rates all last year.
Yeah.
They were $11.51 an hour, and they're up to 15.
Right.
And then Jeremy's is slightly different.
Okay. And I have not done a deep dive at all on the hours and any of that, so please no questions. Yeah, what we did is we hired me. So, and I've gone through my training and I'm a municipal agent, but I've ended up taking on many of the responsibilities of the tax collector during the search for our new one. I have good news on that. We are at a finalist stage.
Great.
An active trained tax collector from another municipality, and I should hopefully have a letter to you to appoint them hopefully soon.
Poaching, huh?
Huh?
Poaching.
She came to us. We didn't poach. But that has slowed down kind of my ramping on in my new role. But it has allowed me to kind of learn the office too and do the work at the window. So, yeah, that's the, you can read this. Basically, I looked at your goals for last year and we hit some of them. We've started the monthly election meetings, been doing lots of training. We're gonna have a new statewide voting database coming online. I've now heard April and August. I'll believe either when it actually happens.
It just starts with an A.
It's an A, that's, yeah. I'll be going to that training in a little bit. And I am working with Bobby Hitchcock, we've talked about it, and I know it's in the budget potentially to be used with ARPA funds to buy the e-poll books.
What's that?
That's where you check in.
Oh, okay.
They're using them in Lebanon, we're gonna look at them in a couple of weeks to see how they actually work. But we have some funds available to try that, hopefully in place by the September state primary. So, you can move on. So next year, as I thought about the office, we need to fully integrate the new tax collector. What our office does is, it's the exceptional service. I've been really struck by, I've been here 4.5 months, sorry. Tracy Walsh, Deputy Director of Administrative Services. But here in the clerk's office, we are the revenue engine for everything else. And I don't think it quite struck me the same way until I worked in this space. But you all know that because you see the budgets, but we bring it in. So, and I want to, even though there's no one left in the room, to you all though. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Michael. But
Michael's there.
Michael's here. Oh, you're staying. Yeah.
Every word.
Put on a real public thank you to Donna Stender, our assistant town clerk, who has seen us kept that engine going through multiple transitions over the last few years. We cannot thank her enough. But moving on, I'm really hoping for a period of stability once the new tax collector is here. But we do know that Donna has announced her intent probably to retire within 9 or so months. So we'll start making succession plannings from there. We're also looking at some new technological solutions in the clerk's office. The software we're using is outdated and might become obsolete fairly soon. I pushed off some of that research till I had a new tax collector so they could work with me to research some options. We are also not yet able to buy new ballot machines. I know you all have seen, used, and loved our AccuVotes. We don't have full certification for any vendor right now. So we'll hopefully have more to tell you on that by the summer or fall. I have got some quotes, so we have some ideas. And then, I don't know where I put it in here, but working with our elected town clerk to really think about our volunteers for elections, how we can do a better job of recruiting, training, and retaining those volunteers because they are key to our elections. You can go forward. So on the budget side, there's not much increase. I can leave it to Ellen and Alex. I've only been here 4.5 months, and so barely been able to get a handle on our budget. We've had some nice increases, thinking about one silly thing was flat. Postage had been left flat for years, even though we mail out, I can't even tell you how much, and so we bumped that up. Like other departments, more professional development for our staff. I myself am going to plan to go through the joint certification program for clerks and tax collectors, so have that training. And then just a few more small increases. In revenue, I worked with Ellen Ola, but this when I looked at the numbers, I think there definitely there's another potential for 100K in motor vehicles going forward into next year, and a few others in there. With anything you two would add.
Why
Yeah.
another 100,000? Are people buying more cars, or they're buying more expensive cars, or why do you have that?
I started looking at the trends over years, and basically we had been running ahead of our budget for the last several years, which was enough to make me feel very confident in putting it in at 100K more.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a very interesting statistic to know that what's the volume and what's the rate driver. We've definitely seen, the increases. The only thing I'll add is that the personnel costs, actually when we, if we actually bring this individual on board, those will come down a little bit. I had put in the high end of that open position, so that'll come off a little bit.
And we will, I think, save, as opposed to some of the candidates we looked at, the person we're hoping to hire will require less training. She is actually already certified as a municipal agent, so we won't have to send through that at the state. She is already actually active both statewide and regionally with the tax collectors, so other than learning our software, she'll hit the ground running.
Great.
Any other questions? Gary?
Yes. Tracy, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
And we're shaking hands
Yep.
again, isn't that kind of fun? So, anyway, I have to say, last year we weren't clear, exactly how the new position was going to shake out, and I have to say, looking at the spreadsheet, I'm still a little confused, where we see clerk part-time salaries going down 90,000, but full-time going up 89,000. Can you explain that so that I can conceptualize what's going on?
In the 24 budget, I would struggle for an explanation, but the addition of Tracy's position was on the part-time.
It got put on the wrong line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was put there to separate it out in a separate account, but that's why.
Okay, so Tracy is.
I am full-time.
Yes, and
we're 3 FTEs.
Yeah. Thank you. I was sort of thinking that was the case. And then on the tax collector part, then I see that is going up, and you were saying, right now it's scheduled to go up by 10,000, but you're saying that was the entire package that it could come to, but you're thinking it won't.
No, correct.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
And we should, by the end of this week, if not this week, next week, we will have final numbers to be able to update that.
Okay.
For the final budget.
All right, and then just on the spreadsheet, the transfer to the municipal transportation fee reserve, it just says 0, but I think we are collecting the $5 for every vehicle, so
Yeah, we have that.
Okay.
I haven't collected at least more than $50 worth of it today, yes.
Okay, good, and and if anybody's interested, Ellen and Alex were kind enough from our finance committee meeting to update the year-to-date income, and that is at 58% for what we have. But I just want to say, so we're 58% through the year. We've collected 66% of the amount of the motor vehicles that we were thinking we would.
Yep. Yeah.
So we're definitely running ahead for the end of February. But I know from past presentations, it's always the spring is the big, when everybody sort of says, yeah, I'm going to buy the new car now that winter's over. So
That, and it's also the timing when some of the fleets go through their renewals. We have just gone through some renewals for the Dartmouth fleet and
Okay.
things like that. So those also cause some of the fluctuations from month for month when large fleets are done.
right, but it does definitely look like we should meet or exceed the fiscal year '24, which,
Budget.
yeah, and cars are getting more expensive. So that's also, part of the equation. So, okay. All right, well, thank you for explaining exactly who's on what line, if not what base.
Thanks. Oh, very good.
And I'll just add a
Base.
thought too, that, thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
You know,
Thanks.
Tracy sort of jumped in, and then we were down a position, and so she's taken on a lot, as well as Donna, who I'm glad you mentioned, so I want to give an
Every
extra,
day.
an extra thumbs up to both of them for holding a lot of things together over the last couple of months.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Are there other things, I'm looking at the agenda and additional questions or feedback?
The only thing I wanted to do is just run through a couple of the questions that I want to make sure that we know we need to follow. There was like a bunch of discussion topics, but there was a few specific things that I think we needed to follow up on, so if I could just run through those.
That'd be great.
And if I missed anything, please.
And I know I missed, but I brought it at the finance committee, just understanding the community fund, what the fee is now, that we charge Norwich and.
This is for ambulance?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike, stop. Yeah, go ahead, Tracy, you guys can go. I mean, you're welcome to stay, but.
All right, so I got a question about the ambulance community fund,
Thanks, Tracy.
and just how that number is built, just how the number is.
Yeah, where the level is now, because like we've been, but how it's built, whatever you want to tell us.
Okay.
I don't want to have information that we did get some.
Yeah, and understanding that there's some sensitivity with the timing of the communication to the other communities and so.
All right, so that's one we've got. The other was just following up on the question from the finance committee about tracking some of the FTEs, and Ellen and I have that on our list, and that we will work on that.
We're just looking for
We need to
questions.
follow up on a question about if and how many hours were put additional in the Etna Library for the assistant librarian. There was a question about where the cameras at the Howe Library, which budget line they were in, whether they were DPW or not. I missed something about that motor vehicle fee just now.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, so something about that. The, how we build up the fees, the community fees for ambulance. And those were all the questions, not the sort of general questions, but the questions that need a follow-up at some point. Does that sound about right? Okay. Well, if you think of them, email, but yes, and if nothing jumps out at anybody, then something?
Not tonight. I
Okay.
have some other questions that I haven't sent to you yet, but I can, and it has more to do with, and I don't know if it's, I've tried to digest so much, I don't know where I saw this, but one was about childcare.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if that was in the
We're
CIPC or.
It's gonna be in Parks and Rec tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll discuss that then,
Oh, yeah,
but just
yeah.
my heads up is that, has there been any study or communication with the school district about pre-K or, any kind of preschool program as, before this town gets involved with childcare, have we done any kind of assessment on that? Or
Understood the question.
understood the
Yeah.
question. My other question has to do with kind of the staffing and initiatives for placemaking downtown, and I think that's using more ARPA funds, and I think it's in the CIPC, or may even just be special funding, the special initiatives. Specific question about the park. That's the land that's owned by Ledyard, and kind of investing $100,000 on that land, and is there a permanent easement, or what's Ledyard doing, or like, how does the community feel about it? What kind of community engagement have we had beyond the non-committee committee of the
The
downtown
answer's
group.
nothing.
And then I also want to know, before we spend more money on Allen Street pilot, just understand that all of the retailers and owners of property there have been suitably engaged again widely. To shut down a road for 2 to 3 months as a pilot feels like we should really understand the traffic impacts and kind of the community impact, and again, the value of community engagement and seeing how people feel about doing that before we spend actual dollars on it. So those are a couple of things that I can think of off the top of my head. I do have a notebook that I haven't had a chance to type up yet, but I will get those sometime between now and tomorrow afternoon to you.
Yeah, and no worries, I mean, a lot of those
Yeah.
we're gonna go through tomorrow.
Yeah,
So they're still remaining at the end of the.
Yeah, I just didn't want to like hit you like,
Sure, no,
oh, wait a
okay.
minute, how come you never mentioned this before? It's
Right.
like, well, now that it's all in front of me,
Right.
you know, it's like, there's a lot of stuff. You know, some of the CIPC stuff, you know, there's a committee, but we haven't as a board really discussed any of that in great detail, and I think that that's part of our job. I think.
Because the CIPC, excuse me for interrupting, but it's supposed to be advisory to the
Yeah.
select
Yes.
board.
Yeah. It's
advisory, and it was
Yeah, okay, so, because when I saw the $29 million in street improvements, Main Street, and then the takeover of Greensboro and Great Hollow and Etna Road, I mean, it was, I had always envisioned, you know, Greensboro. I hadn't really thought about Great Hollow or Etna, and you know, maybe it all makes sense, but I think in terms of thinking about how capital impacts operating and kind of the total budget, I was like, whoa, okay, let's like wrap our heads around this, and I need more than a few days to.
Well, and just so you know, and there's other CIPC committee members here too. The committee just took the list for
Yep.
future years. I mean, we were very hard pressed to just deal with fiscal year 25.
Yep.
And understanding that, there was no attempt. It was just kind of, hey,
Everything's in.
put it on the list.
Yep.
And there's absolutely no opinion on any
Okay.
of that. So,
Okay.
That's good.
yes.
Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful, because you know, some of the things, and I also, and I think I put in my notes to you, Alex, is that, you know, Parks and Rec, certainly they didn't have any union staff until the arborist and grounds were moved from DPW to Parks and Rec. You know, John oversaw, you know, the rec center and the rec program and the senior center, but didn't take care of parks, didn't do street trees, he didn't do any of that, so he didn't have any union staff. And the other piece about Parks and Rec is that, you know, for years we've asked for an inventory of all the parks and all the park facilities, and we still don't have that.
It is complete, it was
Oh.
completed a few years ago,
Well,
so I'm not sure,
Hasn't
we
been
can talk more about
it,
that.
yeah, it hasn't been
What-
shared, but it would be great if we could get a copy of it then.
Right,
That would be really great
sure.
as we think about, you know, enhancing Parks and Rec, because I think there's some interesting ideas that are being shared about moving departments into that department, so, which kind of makes sense, you know, but it'd be good to really wrap our heads around it before we, you know, deliver a budget to the town voters.
Feedback on how this went tonight. I think it went really well. I think the format was awesome. The slides were very helpful. Enjoyed every second of the department heads' presentations, and the additional information you two provided was very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other board members? Feedback on how we did tonight?
Well, first of all, that was excellent, and the spreadsheet and the slide combination
Yep.
is terrific.
It
It's
is.
good to go through, and I liked familiarity of most of the department members with their budgets, and then you guys jumped in, so I thought that all went well. Just a general comment is, just based on the numbers that you publicly posted, we have enjoyed a number of tailwinds this year, and I guess I would add to the list the drop off of the 100,000 Dresden payments, which is additive to this year versus last. And then the 350 in interest, and the 100 into rooms and meals, and the 100 in motor vehicles, and the 100 in planning and zoning, and all adds up to 750,000, which is like 6% of the tax rate. So if you added that back, we'd be at 13%. So we're getting the benefit this year of those, which is terrific. But as we think through, the next couple of years, and especially as we think about implications of labor costs, et cetera, I'm just a little bit alarmed about, we're fine this year perhaps, but fiscal year 26 and 27, I think some of that might plot out to a hefty increase. I gave you some of those questions before, but I just want to understand, the full implications of what we're signing up for on a multi-year basis. It's probably as much as I can say in a public meeting about that, but let's just make sure. Yeah, okay.
And the finance committee seconds that constellation of analysis.
All right. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Carrie actually beat you.
Oh, yeah, no. I wasn't looking right. I
Yeah.
apologize. My
So you can
apologies.
second if you want.
Yes, good night.
Will you
Carrie.
second?
Will you second it? Or we're gonna
Yes,
wait?
I'd love to second.
Don't leave it hanging.
Don't leave it hanging.
Any discussion?
Except my
All in
apologies.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Please don't oppose.
We're done, Nick. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Nick, for
Um,
hanging
just
in.
for